Revive the game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelley with you, broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studio, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. It is a Reaction Monday, brought to you by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville. So glad to have you with us on your Monday morning. Parker is back from vacation. Parker, what's going on? How was your trip?
Back in the flesh. Jake, it was a much-needed week. I feel very rested, rejuvenated, all the words that starts with R, but I am going to get sappy just for a quick second.
Go ahead.
Because on Thursday, I went to my alma mater and went around on the football field, went around the football facilities, and just standing on that football field reminded me of how much I miss it. And giving up football was one of the hardest things that I ever had to do. But I'm so grateful, I'm so blessed that I get to be around the game in some way. Tomorrow, the Titans start training camp, and I am so excited. And I just know this football season, we're going to have one of the best years at 102.5 we've ever had.
I am fired up to get football season officially started. We have been waiting. We've talked about the dead period, the 6 weeks off between mini camp and training camp. It all ends tomorrow. I should say it all gets started tomorrow. Mike Borgonzi and Robert Saleh going to speak tomorrow as the veterans report, and then practice on Wednesday, and then we roll. It is football season. Maybe not officially. You know, we got a few weeks until games actually get started, but training camp is when you really start to feel like you're gearing up for the year. So excited for that. You did miss out on a great week at SEC Media Days, Parker. I'm sure you were keeping up. Anything stand out to you that you saw on Twitter or from the press conferences from SEC Media Days down in Tampa last week?
I was keeping up with it, and I listened to most of the pressers from the coaches. Listened to Lane Kiffin first, Josh Heupel, Clark Lee, all of them. Pete Golding, I thought was incredible. Here's my main takeaway, because I know we're going to talk about this a little bit later in the show. I was looking at the grid. It was amazing to me the amount of people that would arrest John Sumrall for what he said. I don't think they know who John Sumrall is.
He was pretty clearly joking.
That was hilarious. Yeah. I loved it. I love John Sumrall. I love his personality. And also, too, Will Stein. How about Will Stein?
It's me.
And the crazy, that quote got taken so out of context. You got to go back and listen to the clip. But I loved it. I loved it. And I know Connor was eating it up too.
Well, that's what SEC Media Days are, right? Like, it's everything gets said, and it's a 30-minute press conference that really gets boiled down to just a few sound bites here and there. On Friday, Parker, we played our 5 favorite sound bites from SEC Media Days. Both of those made it on there. John Sumrall going after the media member whose phone went off during his presser, and then the Will Stein, it's me. My favorite one, which shocked me because I did not know a ton about Ryan Silverfield heading in. My favorite soundbite from the whole week was when he got asked about aura. Have you heard this?
Actually, I actually missed that part.
I wonder if we'll have
to play it somewhere in here.
It might be.
I'll go and listen to it.
It might be in soundbites from Friday because I sent it to Frazier. They asked him about not having aura. I guess there were pictures of him with recruits, and he just looks like your average, like 40-year-old guy hanging out with the recruits. Like, he looked like he would be Brian Kelly on the spinning camera thing. Remember when he was dancing at LSU? Like, that was kind of the aura-less conversation that was going on around Ryan Silverfield. And they asked him about it. You found it? All right. Let's take a listen to this. This was Ryan Silverfield when he was asked about being auraless at SEC Media Days.
I love it. I never thought coming here today, these last couple of days that people would talk about aura. First off, I don't know what the hell that means. Like I said all along, I don't. If it's about fashion or all that stuff, certainly have no aura. But if it's about having a presence about yourself, those who are around me know that at least I'm a genuine, real dude. And I think you talk to our players, they get a presence around me, they get it. And if aura means being cool, doing all those things. Well, listen, I got a hot wife for a reason, right? I mean, I can get down. I can recite, Notorious B.I.G. lyrics. I can recite, whatever you want me to do. Let's go. But I've got enough to find ways to win football games, and that's all that matters.
I got a hot wife, and I can recite Notorious B.I.G. lyrics. It just makes me giggle every time. I can get down. So that was Ryan Silverfield. It was a fun week at SEC Media Days. I mean, it's talking season. We wrap up Media Days with the Big Ten coming up this week, and we're going to talk a decent amount of college football here in this first hour. But yeah, I mean, again, there's not a whole lot that you can gather about what teams are going to be, but I did think it was a good first impression for a lot of the first-time head coaches. We just talked about 3 of them, right? Sumrall, Stein, Silverfield. I think it was a good first impression to the rest of the SEC, to their fan bases, and we'll see what it looks like when they get on the field. That's obviously what actually matters, but I did think that there was a lot of good headlines in terms of what you want to hear from your leader, but also ones that make you chuckle a little bit as we gear up for football season.
And you could tell the coaches that were trained really well by the PR staff at their respective schools. Like for Pete Golding, he started out that way. And then there was a point in time, and you can tell when the switch just flipped, he's like, oh, screw it. When he kept getting asked about Lane Kiffin and then he just went in. I love seeing the transparency from some of these coaches. With Mike Elko too. How do you keep your players from getting, the success from last year? How do you keep them from,
show them the trophy case?
It's empty.
Yep.
I loved it. I thought there were some great sound bites, and honestly, I felt like it was a calmer year compared to what we've had in the past.
Well, and maybe an unexpectedly calmer year, because you look at everything that happened between Ole Miss and LSU and Lane Kiffin, and you thought maybe there would be fireworks. And overall, I think Golding and Kiffin both did a decent job of handling the situation. Kiffin didn't come in guns a-blazing, really. Now, he made some jokes, like talking about how he could still see Pete Golding on his Ring camera or something like that. And he was talking about how he does regret the way that things ended in Oxford. So there's a whole lot that went into that, and I think people were expecting there to be more jabs thrown left and right between LSU and Ole Miss. I did see, I'm sure you weren't locked in while you were on vacation to the coverage, Parker, but there was a conversation about what do the expectations have to be for Lane Kiffin in year 1 at LSU? Because he left a team that was 1 game away from playing for a national championship. Do you think that LSU has to be one of those Final Four teams, a team that's close to playing for a national championship in year 1 under Lane Kiffin? Or do you think this was more of a long-term move given the resources that LSU has over Ole Miss?
See, I'm inclined to think that if you were to put me on the spot today, I would pick LSU to be in the playoff. But what really bothers me is everybody throws around the number that they spent on this roster, and I get it. It's a very high number. They're a top 5 spender in the country. But at the same time, if you're not cooking the meal with the ingredients, it doesn't really matter. Not saying that Lane Kiffin's not going to be able to mesh the players that he has, but they relied a lot on the portal this year, and that's going to take some chemistry, and that's going to take, I'm glad there was no spring transfer portal window, because that allows the team to keep the continuity that they have throughout the winter, throughout the spring, and heading into the fall. But everybody throws around that number, right? That LSU is just going to be some bona fide national championship contender this year. I can't go as far to say that. The team they have is very talented, but at the end of the day, they gotta win football games, and they got to develop that chemistry.
Yeah, and it's a tough schedule for them. And I think when you look at Lane Kiffin's move, it wasn't for just 1 year. Now, you never know what could happen. If the Alabama job opens up, would Lane Kiffin look to jump ship again? I don't know. But LSU in general is going to give him a better chance long-term to not just win a championship, but win multiple championships. Now, Lane Kiffin has to prove that he can do that at the highest level. Obviously, what he's done in his previous stops has been impressive. He hasn't been able to go win the big one. But LSU is one of those schools where you're going to have all of the resources and you're going to have the infrastructure to go do that. But you do look at last year and you say, man, he left a team that played in the college football playoff semifinals. If he wants to prove that he made the right move, do they have to make a deep run this year? So I see both sides of the coin. I lean more that, yeah, they're a talented enough team and they're spending enough money that they need to be in the playoff this year. But I don't think it's like a complete and utter failure if they don't get as far as Ole Miss did last year.
And considering how passionate that fan base is too, I'm sure they're looking at what Ole Miss did last year with a less talented roster than what LSU is going to have this year, and they made it to the semifinals of the college football playoff.
Yep.
So LSU fans are probably going to expect Lane Kiffin with this year's team to take a step higher and get to that national championship game. But I just don't know, like, if you were to poll the fan base in Baton Rouge now and say, would you be okay hosting a first-round game of the college football playoff, maybe even making it to the next round, if that was where I told you were going to be at the end of the year? Would you be okay with that?
I think in year one, you'd say yes.
I think they'd say yes,
yeah.
too.
But obviously, you bring in Lane Kiffin to win a national championship. That's the goal, but it doesn't have to be in year one. Going to be a talented team, going to be an expensive team, but as we've seen, spending the most money doesn't necessarily guarantee that you're going to be playing deep into the playoffs. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. The game text line is driven by Wilson County Hyundai, online at wilsoncountyhyundai.com. Be a part of our conversation. You can call or text the game. Again, it's 615-737-1025. Lots to get to on this Reaction Monday. We're going to spend a lot of the first hour on college football. The SEC preseason poll came out Friday afternoon. I wanted to react to that, get Parker's thoughts on some more around the SEC. The Big Ten's media days start tomorrow. We're not going to have a whole lot of time to talk Big Ten media days this week, and obviously our part of the country, we don't care quite as much about Big Ten media days. But with Titans training camp getting started tomorrow, I did want to take a quick preview, as we've been doing on Mondays around college football. Look at what the Big Ten could look like this season. We'll do that this hour. Then into the Titans. Training camp opens up tomorrow. What are the biggest questions facing the Tennessee Titans heading into training camp 2026? All of that on this Reaction Monday. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelley, next man up, 102.5 The Game. Next man up, 102.5 The Game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelley with you on a Reaction Monday. We want to hear from you. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel at 102.5 The Game for live shows and exclusive content. We'll be monitoring the chat there too. Starting the show with college football. Lots of NFL Titans talk coming up throughout the show this morning as well. But with Parker out last week, he's our college football guy. The Air Raid with Parker Kelley, Tuesday and Thursday nights. Make sure you tune in. But we wanted to get Parker's thoughts on some of the storylines around SEC Media Days, including the preseason poll, which came out pretty much right after we went off the air on Friday. Georgia projected to win slightly over Texas, very close between those two at the top, as expected. Couple of teams that stand out to me. How about Florida at number 9? We just talked about John Summerall. I know you like Florida, Parker. Do you think that's a team that could be a top half of the SEC squad in year one under a new coach?
Yes, I've been very high on Florida, and I don't want people to get it confused. Just because I'm high on Florida doesn't mean I'm locking them in to be in the college football playoff. But Jake, honestly, I've gone through this roster several times, and I kid you not, Florida to me has a top 5 trio wide receivers in the country.
Wow.
With Vernell Brown, who's a preseason All-SEC guy, Dallas Wilson, who is a 5-star receiver going into his sophomore year. They got Eric Singleton from the portal, who was with Buster Faulkner, their new offensive coordinator at Georgia Tech. And they have one of the best running backs in the SEC in Jaden Ball. Now, the problem on offense for them is they have to replace 4 offensive linemen, which is going to be tough, and they haven't figured out their quarterback
including
yet.
Your guy, Jake Slaughter.
Yeah, exactly. But if I'm making this decision for Florida at quarterback, honestly, I don't need them to do anything special. When you have a plethora of weapons right there, I just need a point guard, somebody that's going to distribute the football. And then defensively, John Summerall has talked about this, where they feel really good about that front 7. They have a guy by the name of Jaden Wood, who is a defensive end who is out here power cleaning 405 pounds with ease, another preseason All-SEC guy. I just think the roster is a top 25 roster in the country. I don't know how many games they'll win this year, but I do know that their roster is very, very talented.
Yeah, I mean, I was a little bit surprised to see Florida pick number 9 in the conference. I know that's a sleeping giant, right? Like we've said that before, that this is a program that has resources. They've got the buy-in. And if you get the right coach in there, that's a Florida team that could be back in the playoff conversation very quickly. But I was surprised to see them picked ahead of a team like Missouri that has had at least 8 wins each of the past 3 seasons. And I know that Ahmad Hardy, you're worried about him coming back from the gunshot wound that he suffered over the offseason, and he's been cleared to practice, but you just don't know how healthy he'll be. South Carolina with Lenora Sellers, Vanderbilt picked below Florida. It does surprise me that Florida was picked that high, but I do see what you're saying, though. If you look at if you're looking at what's under the hood for Florida, there's more to like there than what they've shown on the football field the last few years under Billy Napier.
And Billy Napier, I think he's going to have success at James Madison, but there were a lot of things where he was he was a little bit more stubborn because he refused to give up play calling during his time at Florida. And as a head coach, especially in the SEC, you have a lot more to balance than pre-NIL, pre-transfer portal, and he just refused to give it up. And I believe that was one of the major things that cost him his job. John Summerall's not going to be calling plays, but the thing that I love most about John Summerall is when he was at Troy, he had a running back, Kamani Vidal, who's now with the Chargers. There was a game in which I think they gave him the ball like 30 times, and they ran crazy over their opponent. And then the next week, they threw for over 400 yards, and they barely ran the ball. So John Summerall doesn't have a true identity for his offensive teams. They just do whatever it takes to win. And I love that.
I really liked what we heard from John Summerall. And again, Florida, that's one of those programs that if you get the right coach in there, they can be right back towards the top of the country in a flash. So we will see. Will they be middle of the pack, top half of the SEC this season in year one? You got to see it on the field first, but picked 9th in the preseason poll. Let's get to the local teams here. Tennessee picked at 8, Vanderbilt at 13. For the Vols, 8, too high, too low, or just right, Parker?
I think that's about right, just because we've gone through this roster, and really outside of quarterback, I don't have a whole lot of questions about this team. I just have a gut feeling that this curve defensively under Jim Knowles, this system that everybody's learning, is going to be expedited because he's brought over former players and he's brought over former staff members at previous stops, not just Penn State, but Ohio State and Oklahoma State as well. But losing Chaz Coleman obviously is a huge blow.
Yep.
So that's going to be something that they're going to have to overcome. Really, the only question mark is at quarterback. And the longer this thing goes on, the more I feel that it's going to be Faison Brandon. The good news is having that those first 2 games against group of 5 FCS opponents, and Georgia Tech's obviously mixed in there as well. You don't have to have your starter figured out in week 1.
Yep.
You can have it figured out in week 2, because when you go on the road to Atlanta, you need to have a pretty good idea who's going to be your guy this fall.
Yeah, I think that Furman game, if you haven't decided who the starting quarterback is going to be by then, that's the game you have to figure it out, because you can't be alternating drives or playing halves against Georgia Tech. It's not – the Yellow Jackets aren't going to be as good as they were last year, but I think they are going to be a solid team, a team that if you don't play your best football, you could certainly lose to on the road. So I agree with you. I think Tennessee at 8 is just right. The top 7 teams in the SEC, I think those are the teams that are competing to go to the playoffs this year. Not that Tennessee can't, but those are the teams that are looking and saying, yeah, we should be in the playoffs this season. Most of those teams were in the playoffs last year. In fact, 6 of them were. Is that right? Yeah, 6 of them were. LSU is the only one who wasn't, and of course, they have an influx of talent with Lane Kiffin coming in. So I think those top 7 are pretty clear-cut. You can see by the voting that there's a pretty steep drop-off from Oklahoma to Tennessee. I think the Vols are pretty much just right there at 8. Vanderbilt, I think, is too low at 13. Now, I know there's uncertainty about quarterback with no Diego Pavia. They also lost a lot on the offensive line, lost some pieces on offense, Eli Stowers, Trey Richardson. But, man, putting Auburn over Vandy, I don't see it. South Carolina, I do like South Carolina. I think I'd put Vandy and SC probably in a similar tier. I think Vandy, it's not like I'm saying that they should be 9 or 10, but I don't think they should be as low as 13. The same place they were picked last year, and then they went out and won 10 games. I don't think they're going to win 10 games this year, but I think they're better than the 13th team in the SEC.
I would have had Vanderbilt at 11. Right now, it's just hard for me to blindly trust South Carolina because you have Lenore Sellers, you have Dylan Stewart, and probably Nick Harbor will all be first-round picks if I had to bet.
Yeah.
But outside of that, I don't feel like they majorly upgraded at a lot of spots on the roster. So in Vanderbilt, it's kind of like Tennessee. It's, okay, Jared Curtis probably going to start at quarterback. What does he look like as a freshman? And then 2, defensively, how much did they improve from last year? Because it's a lot of the same guys, but we've talked about Ricardo Jones, the safety who came over from Clemson, 6 interceptions last year, second in the country. I love that pickup, but I just want to know what the front 7 is going to look like.
For Vandy, I think the defense could be better than everybody's expecting. Clark Lee, in general, his defenses are they're better than the whole is better than the sum of its parts. But they do have a lot of really talented players in the secondary. You mentioned Ricardo Jones. They've got Martell Height. They've got CJ Hurd. Jordan Matthews is back again. In the front 7, you lose some pieces at linebacker. You still have Brian Longwell. You still have Miles Capers on the edge. You still have you get Issa Wataha back. You've got Glenn Seabrooks. So there's a lot of good pieces on this Vandy defense. Again, the quarterback situation, you don't know. Jared Curtis is a true freshman, or Blaze Berlowitz. They're almost certainly not going to give you the same production Diego Pavia did last year, obviously, but I do think that they're going to be more of a middle of the pack SEC team rather than a bottom third of the SEC team. Quickly, before we wrap up on the SEC, Parker, me and Nick Frazier did our SEC bold predictions in place of Monday headlines last Friday. I picked Ole Miss to get their first Heisman Trophy winner. I did not specify whether it's Kawan Lacey or Trinidad Chambliss. And I also said Alabama is going to lose 4 straight games and Kalen DeBoer will be fired before he comes to Nashville. That was my big bold.
That's bold.
That was my
That's
bold
really
prediction. Nick Frazier, I believe, said that Mississippi State going to win 8 games. A little bit of a homer pick there. And I'm forgetting the other one. It was maybe something about Florida. Actually, I think he said Florida makes the playoffs. So if you had to pick an SEC...
He's higher on Florida than I am.
SEC bold prediction, what do you got?
I don't know why I just don't feel like Ole Miss is getting talked about enough. It seems like it's Georgia and Texas, and then there's your tier 2 of teams. Why is Ole Miss not in tier 1? I do not understand. Trinidad Chambliss is going to be better in year 2 because this is his second full year in the SEC, coming up from Ferris State. Is there a better 1-2 punch in the country at quarterback and running back than what Ole Miss has?
Yeah, Chambliss and Lacey. That's why I said I think they're going to win a Heisman Trophy. I'm not going to pick which one, but I think those two guys both could get it done.
Right, and I think the defense is going to be similar to the 2024 defense when they led the SEC in sacks, and they were pretty much the best defense overall. They have the pieces there. Despite losing some guys to LSU, I think they're actually better on the defensive side of the ball. So my bold prediction, for the first time in school history, Ole Miss is going to the SEC championship.
Oh,
They've never done it before.
Okay, I like that. Ole Miss, if we're both right, Ole Miss with a huge year, a Heisman Trophy winner, and they go play in Atlanta for the first time.
And if Trinidad Chambliss has his fastball, is there a better quarterback in the country?
Based on what we saw in the playoff last year, maybe not. And the Athletic put out there, they ranked all 138 FBS quarterbacks. They had Chambliss number 1.
I did too.
I think he might be primed for a massive year based on what we saw in the biggest moments last year in the playoff. He was great. So I'm excited to see what Ole Miss does this year. I agree with you. I think that they are a less talented team than Georgia or Texas, but I think the preseason poll got it about right with them being right behind him at number 3. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. If you want to text or call, our phone line's driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We will continue the college football talk here in hour number 1. Big Ten Media Days start tomorrow. We're going to be mostly Titans focused the rest of this week as training camp opens. So did want to get Parker's thoughts on the Big Ten as talking season wraps up this week across college football. Then at 10 a.m., we're into the Titans for pretty much the rest of the show. What do we want to see from training camp? What are the biggest questions heading into training camp? We'll get into all of it coming up at the top of the hour. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelley, next man up, 102.5 The Game. Next man up, 102.5, The Game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelley alongside you. Talking college football here in the first hour. Talking season almost over. SEC Media Days wrapped up last week in Tampa. Big Ten Media Days about to get underway in Chicago tomorrow. You just missed out on it, Parker.
I know. Why was everybody in Chicago after I left? I mean, the WNBA All-Star game,
right?
Not that I paid attention to that, but like, I'm a big fan of Jess Sims. Jess Sims was there. Malika Andrews was there. I think there was a concert in Chicago after I left. Why is everybody going to Chicago when I leave?
Yeah, I don't know. You were there to watch the Tigers take 2 of 3 against the Cubs. We won't talk about the game that you were at.
Thank goodness I went to the game they won. 6 runs in the first inning? Are we kidding?
Framber Valdez is horrible.
See, I wanted to text you, but I'm like, the Tigers may very well take this thing tomorrow.
Well, so the Tigers have been playing well, but they blew 2 leads in the 8th inning each of the last 2 days against the Royals. I just saw a graphic that said the Tigers have had 17 games where they've led in the 7th inning or later that they've lost. Like, you win half of those games, you're in first place in your division. They've been so bad. The bullpen, the bats late in games. Anyway.
It was a tough watch. It was a tough watch.
That was I'm glad you got to see a win there. I'm glad you got to see your Cubs raise the W.
PCA leadoff triple to like the first couple pitches of the game.
Yeah,
it was great.
He batted twice in the first inning or something like that.
they almost made it through the full cycle of players. It was crazy.
Well, that was last week in Chicago. This week, Big Ten Media Days get started, and there's going to be a whole lot of conversation around everything that was talked about with SEC Media Days. Greg Sankey got asked about the SEC breaking away. I'm sure Tony Petitti, that might be the first question he gets asked tomorrow. Is the SEC talked about breaking away from the NCAA? Where are you on that? The Protect College Sports Act not going to be voted on this summer. So it's going to be at least another year until there's some sort of congressional why am I blanking on the word? Intervention into college sports. So I think there's going to be a lot of big hot topics for Tony Petitti. But let's talk about the teams here. Ohio State, Oregon, Indiana. Those are your clear-cut top 3 in the Big Ten. I think that all 3 of those teams are national championship contenders. All 3 of those teams should be in the playoffs. Indiana's the one that I look at and I think I'm the most interested in because Ohio State and Oregon, they're loaded. They have been loaded for a long time, and those are traditional powers over the past 2 decades in college football. Indiana obviously is not. They have been one of the coolest stories in college sports, making the playoffs in year 1 under Curt Cignetti and then going undefeated and winning the national championship last year. What do you think this year's edition of the Hoosiers is going to look like as they try and defend their title?
I don't know about you, but I'm done doubting Curt Cignetti after last year. You go position group by position group on the defense, and they have probably a top 3 linebacking core in the Big Ten. The defensive line is up there with the very best in the country. The secondary, even with, losing D'Angelo Pons, I still feel really good about. You flip over to the offense, they have the best left tackle in the country in Carter Smith. At quarterback, Josh Hoover from TCU. I am willing to bet a lot of money that Curt Cignetti is going to get the absolute most out of Josh Hoover. Josh Hoover struggled with turnovers last year at TCU. He had 5 games with 2+ interceptions, so that's something that is going to have to get fixed or else you won't play in this offense. It's going to be a running back by committee. The wide receiver room, Charlie Becker returns, and they got Nick Marsh, transfer from Michigan State. So that's going to be another good position group as well. Indiana, I think, will absolutely be in the playoffs.
I think they're a playoff team for sure. You're right, though. Josh Hoover is as with most teams, the quarterback is going to be the most important piece, especially replacing the Heisman winner, the number 1 overall pick in Fernando Mendoza. You bring in Josh Hoover, who you're right. If he has one flaw, it's the turnover issues. He averaged 11 picks per season with TCU. Their head coach was talking about it this offseason after each last year. So Josh Hoover has to be better, but you're right. It's like, who are we to doubt Curt Cignetti right now when it comes to transfer quarterbacks? He brings in Curtis Rourke from Ohio, turns him into an NFL draft pick. Last year brings in Fernando Mendoza, who was a fine quarterback at Cal, but a guy who was kind of unheralded coming over to Indiana. He makes him the Heisman winner and the number 1 overall pick. I don't think you can have those kinds of expectations for Josh Hoover, but I think you have to give Curt Cignetti the benefit of the doubt when it comes to developing transfer quarterbacks and turning them into legitimate, efficient players for his offense.
And he's done more with less. I mean, he brought over guys with him from James Madison. Almost all of them are gone. But now, because of what Indiana was able to accomplish last year, they're attracting the top talent. They brought in the number 1 transfer portal class. They just landed a 5-star wide receiver out of high school, which has never really been done before at Indiana. So winning produces results, right? Guys want to come play for you. And here you have Curt Cignetti doing all this with less. Now he's going to be doing this with even more talented players than he had before.
No, you're right. And we talked about Vanderbilt with the winning that they've had the last few years. You have to capitalize on it on the recruiting trail. You have to use that proof of concept to get more talented players into your building. We've seen Vandy do that. Indiana's doing the same thing at a higher level, obviously. They won the national championship last year. So I agree. I think Indiana is a playoff team and a national championship contender again. How can you say they're not? They're coming off an undefeated national title run last year. If I had to pick a favorite to win the national championship right now, I think it's got to be Ohio State. Like that might be, it's up there with Texas, and we're gonna see those teams square off in week 2 down in Austin. But I think those two might be the most talented rosters in the country. If Julian Sayin can build off of what was an impressive first year starting at quarterback for the Buckeyes, you've got Jeremiah Smith, you've got another reloaded set of weapons around him, you've got Bo Jackson behind you in the backfield. Like, this is a team that could, again, make a deep run in the playoff and possibly win another national championship.
Absolutely. You bring in Arthur Smith as your offensive coordinator. Receiver is never going to be a problem for Ohio State, right? It's not just Jeremiah Smith, but it's 5-star Chris Henry. It's Brandon Ennis, who was also on the roster last year. Bo Jackson returns at running back, who was kind of a revelation for them in the run game. Julian Sayin in year 2. The offensive line, if I had to nitpick Ohio State right now, their offensive line gave up 10 sacks in their last 2 games, Miami and versus Indiana. Yep. So that's got to be better. But also with the guys that the guys that they have on their coaching staff, I feel like that's automatically going to be better, because when you return 4 starters and the other guy at least has some sort of experience, then I feel pretty good about that unit.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see what Art Smith does there. We know here that with the right personnel, Arthur Smith can be a really good creative play caller. The Titans' 2 best offensive seasons in recent memory came with him calling the plays. So I'm excited to see what he does there at Ohio State. And then Oregon, I think, is the other one that you put in that conversation as the top teams in the Big Ten. Bringing back Dante Moore, who, again, probably was a top 5 pick in the NFL draft if you wanted to be this year. That immediately puts them back into title contention. They were in the semifinals last year, didn't play well against Indiana, but the Ducks are a team that are going to try and finally get over the hump this year. Those 3 teams, I think it's pretty clear, cut and dry, that they are a cut above the rest of the Big Ten.
Yeah, Oregon is my favorite to win the Big Ten as of right now, because there's not really a weakness on this team. Remember, Evan Stewart, who missed the entirety of last year due to injury, is back, and he was projected to be a first-round pick after he left Texas A&M. So he comes back. They have Decorian Moore, right? Mateo Uyunglele, DJ's brother, on the defensive line. That defense is loaded from last year. I mean, just littered with, preseason All-Americans on that team. My biggest question is, how does it look when you replace both your offensive and defensive coordinator? Because there's turnover there. Will Stein going to Kentucky, Tosh Lupoy going to Cal. What does that look like? And is Dante Moore able to really excel in those primetime moments when the spotlight's on him?
Yep, that pick 6 that he threw, that was to D'Angelo Pons, right off the bat in the semifinal. That was a moment that it felt like they put themselves behind the 8 ball and just never got back into to have a chance in that game. So you're right, Dante Moore, very talented player, has to prove he can do it when the lights are brightest. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. We'll look around the rest of the Big Ten to wrap up hour number 1. Also a developing story in Chapel Hill around GM Mike Lombardi with the Tar Heels. We'll talk about that. And then again, into the Titans coming up at 10 a.m. Training camp opens up tomorrow. We'll hear from Mike Borgonzi and Robert Saleh tomorrow afternoon, and then practices get rolling on Wednesday, and we go. 615-737-1025. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelley, next man up, 1025 The Game. Next man up, 102.5 The Game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelley, wrapping up the first hour on this Reaction Monday. Talking college football. We'll get into Titans training camp coming up at 10. Big Ten Media Days start tomorrow in Chicago. And as we have for the last month, previewing the conference that speaks that week. We've done the Big 12, the ACC, the SEC. The Big Ten wraps it up this week. Top three teams we went through: Ohio State, Oregon, Indiana. Those are all national championship contenders. But beyond that, who is that next tier of teams in the Big Ten, Parker? I think you talk about USC, you talk about Michigan. Beyond that, maybe Penn State in year one under Matt Campbell. Maybe Iowa. They're always kind of in that 8-win, 9-win equation. Illinois has been good under Brett Bielema. I think, is that like the next tier? And which of those teams do you think is the closest to being a playoff contender in 2026?
My gut tells me it's USC, just because I haven't been as quick to sell my stock on Lincoln Riley as most people have. Offense has never been a problem for him. And when you have Jaden Mayav at quarterback, that's going to make that thing go. What has been the problem for Lincoln Riley has been the defense.
Yeah.
And he made some hiring mistakes, right? Bringing Alex Grinch with him over from Oklahoma when he first got to USC was the biggest mistake that he could have made. And he's having to fix that. He brought in Danton Lynn, who was the defensive coordinator at UCLA. And those last 2 years, the defense continued to get better and better and better. Now you bring over Gary Patterson, who's been retired, was last seen as the head coach at TCU, who's a brilliant defensive mind. So I think that's going to work. And on top of that, you pair that with the number one high school recruiting class in the country in 2026. You're going to have to rely on a lot of those true freshmen, though.
Yeah. And USC, again, like that's the Lincoln Riley shtick, right? Is elite offenses, bad defenses. That was even the case back at Oklahoma. You remember it was the Oklahoma and Oklahoma, Georgia in the Rose Bowl, where Georgia had Sony Michel running wild and Baker Mayfield was going crazy for Oklahoma, and they lost in double overtime in that game. Something
one of
like
my
that.
favorite games I've ever watched.
Unbelievable game, but it was like, man, if Oklahoma had any semblance of a defense, they could have won the national title that year. And that's kind of been the issue at USC. Now, the offenses have not been super consistent. They've had really good years. Last year, they were solid. I agree with you. If that defense can just be average, that's a team that I think I would put probably fourth or fifth in the Big Ten. Michigan they're really intriguing to me because Whittingham is a good coach, but it was at Utah, and it's different coaching at Utah versus Michigan. Bryce Underwood had a good freshman season, not a great freshman season. He needs to take a step forward. Michigan's one of those teams that I also think is talented enough to be in the playoff conversation at the end of the year too.
I don't know. Kyle Whittingham, I thought it was a great, when they had to pivot after the Sherrone Moore stuff went down. Kyle Whittingham has always had to work with less at Utah. So when he got forced out of the door in Salt Lake, now you come to Michigan where resources are basically unlimited. This is the all-time winningest program in the history of college football. You're going to be working with 4 stars. You're going to be working with 5 stars. Yeah. That's not to say you don't have to develop them, because you still have to, but it probably won't take as much development as what you had to do at Utah. Tim Beck, though, bringing over his offensive coordinator, I mean, you go back to his days when he was at New Mexico. I mean, those offenses went from worst to top 25 at least. Then Utah was the 4th ranked offense in the country. I like that pairing with Bryce Underwood.
And it's different Tim Beck, by the way.
Right.
You got 2 Tim Becks.
I'm sorry. Not Tim Beck. Jason Beck.
Okay.
Jason Beck.
Well, I will say there is another Tim Beck.
We talk a lot about Tim Beck here.
Who was the other Tim Beck was offensive coordinator at NC State a few years ago.
And went to Coastal Carolina.
Right. So there are multiple Tim Becks, but
lots
yes, you're
of
right.
Becks.
Yes.
Lots of Becks.
Lots of Becks who became offensive coaches in college football. The game week 2 against Oklahoma, I think that might make or break Michigan's season. You're at home. You win that game, you put yourself in a really good spot, because I think they beat Iowa at home. I think they beat Minnesota on the road. I think they beat Penn State. And you could be 6-0 heading into that game against Indiana at home on October 24th. But if you lose that game, down the stretch, you have to play Indiana, at Oregon, and at Ohio State. If they want to make the playoffs, I think they have to win that game at Oklahoma, because odds are you're not winning all of those games against Ohio State, Oregon, and Indiana, and odds are you're not winning 2 of them. So if you can beat Oklahoma, it gives you a little bit of that buffer to lose a couple of those games and still find your way into the college football playoff field.
The Big Ten has been the best conference in college football the last 3 seasons, right? I don't think there's much disputing that. But in terms of the scheduling dynamic, it's been pretty light for those teams. But for Michigan, it's a lot different this year because they could face up to 6 ranked opponents this season, which is much different from what they have. Obviously, you have that game versus Ohio State. By the way, it's in Columbus at the end of the year. But yeah, that Oklahoma game you talked about, Iowa, I think Minnesota's the dark horse in the Big Ten. That's just how I feel about it.
Boat. I like PJ Fleck.
Penn State, Indiana in there, and then you have to play at Oregon late November, and then you finish off with Ohio State.
Right.
That's tough.
Yeah.
That's really tough.
Any Big Ten schedule where you have to face all 3 of those top-tier teams that we talked about, it's ridiculous, because with 18 teams in the Big Ten, and you have a lot of have-nots in the Big Ten. Rutgers, Wisconsin's been really bad. Michigan State's been really bad. Purdue, UCLA's been bad, although I think they should be better with Bob Chesney there this year. Northwestern, Maryland, there's a lot of teams that it's like, all right, if you're one of the top 5 teams in the Big Ten and you get 6 of those teams on your schedule, you're in a good spot. But yeah, Michigan, they did not get a good draw. Obviously, you always play Ohio State, but having to face Indiana and Oregon will be interesting. So you said Minnesota is your dark horse. I really like Illinois too, with Bielema. I know last year the shine of Illinois fell off after they just got boat raced by Indiana. But looking back now, Indiana obviously was really, really good. And I think in the moment you were like, oh, Indiana's going to be the same thing they were last year. They'll beat up on the weak schedule and then they'll lose to the big dogs. They proved everybody wrong. I think Illinois could be pretty good this year. Now, the schedule is tough. They start Big Ten play at Ohio State. They do have to play Oregon. But down the stretch, there's a lot of winnable games where you could see Illinois possibly being a 9-win team, maybe even 10 if they can steal one of the games that they may not be favored in.
They're definitely, because there are 18 teams in the Big Ten, which makes no sense. They are definitely in the top half, I would say. I just don't know how much of a dark horse they are, because the last 2 years, right, they got 10 wins in 24, 9 wins last year. I don't know how many people they're catching by surprise.
That is true. Yeah.
I do like they got Caton Hauser from East Carolina, which I think will be a good fit. And Brett Bielema has just done a fantastic job there. I think with Minnesota, here's a name that we don't talk about really at all. Darius Taylor at running back.
Yep.
He's phenomenal.
Yep.
They returned their quarterback. So I think Minnesota could catch some teams by surprise in the Big Ten. UCLA is right up there too. I mean, I love Bob Chesney. And I thought that was a great hire.
Nico, did you see the athletic ranking of the quarterbacks where there was, I want to say it was a coordinator in the Big Ten said Nico's ridiculous. And he single-handedly put that team on his back to beat Penn State. I know that Nico is a sore subject around here, and I don't think he was fantastic last season, but there's clearly talent there, right? With Nico Iamaleava. And if you get him in the right system with better talent around him, I do think that UCLA, I think you're right. Maybe that could be a sleeper team that no one's talking about.
I'm just interested to see what that looks like with Bob Chesney, because he's never had a 5-star quarterback, because that's what Nico was, regardless of how he played last year. That's what he was coming out of high school. Can he get the most out of him? Can he get every last drop out of that sponge? I'm interested to see what that looks like, because his offenses at James Madison, and this is a guy in Bob Chesney who has done things the more traditional route of working his way up, Division III, Division II, FCS, Group of 5. Now he gets a chance in the Power 4 in one of the major conferences in college football. I love the hire. I think UCLA is definitely a dark horse.
Big Ten Media Days start tomorrow in Chicago. We're not going to be covering it nearly as closely as we covered SEC Media Days last week, obviously, but did want to give a look at the broader view of this conference heading into 2026. Quickly, before we move on to the Titans, the Michael Lombardi situation at UNC is very interesting. I think we have to wait till there's more information to really make a judgment on this, other than that program is just an absolute mess. Michael Lombardi put on paid administrative leave. According to Pete Thamel, it stems from an HR complaint from a former front office employee. But, I mean, just every time you think that there can't be any more discord and chaos in that program, something else pops up. I don't think the Chapel Bill era is going to last much longer.
I'm with you, and I'm not going to comment on this because I have no idea what's going on.
Right, we don't know what happened.
Caught me completely off guard. There was a lot of expectation. I mean, you remember the buzz before they played TCU in Chapel Hill last year. I mean, College Game Day was there. I mean, that place was packed.
It was a Monday night game. It was the final game of week 1, and I remember everybody was tuned in. It was one of the events early on in college football, was to watch Bill Belichick make his college football debut, and they just got skunked.
After scoring that touchdown, that first touchdown.
They went up 7-0.
And everyone's like, oh boy, here we go. What happened after that? I can't remember.
Yeah, I mean, again, we can't really comment because we don't know what happened. Michael Lombardi, former journalist who has since turned into general manager of UNC football, and there's been so much controversy and everything that goes on with Jordan Hudson that's gone on around the UNC football program, and here's just another layer onto this.
It's not going to work out. And I remember talking about this at the beginning of last year. I think two things can be true. You can be arguably the greatest NFL head coach that ever existed,
right,
but not be able to adjust to college because it's not the same sport.
No, I do think that this is going to change the way you look at Bill Belichick looking back. Like, I do think the way things have gone since Tom Brady left, I think it does alter the way you view him, but that doesn't change the fact that he is maybe the most accomplished coach in NFL history. I know he doesn't have the most wins. Everyone thinks he might come back to the NFL to try and get those last few to pass Shula, but he is still one of the greatest coaches in football history. But it's a disaster in Chapel Hill. And I think UNC, they need to pull the plug and they need to go get a young coach. You went with Mac Brown. You went with Bill Belichick. Go get somebody young who can be an up-and-comer and try and build that program the right way, because it's clearly not working out.
Yeah, it was interesting when they hired him, because I'm like, you're hiring a guy in his 70s?
Right. You just moved on from Mac Brown to basically go to the same well again.
I mean, we're seeing a lot of coaches who are younger getting out.
Right.
I just think it's too much of a workload for a guy that old.
I agree. So we'll keep an eye on it if there's any more developing information there on the story. But Michael Lombardi put on paid administrative leave due to an HR complaint this morning. 615-737-1025. Let's talk Titans when we come back. Training camp starts tomorrow as veterans report. We'll hear from Mike Borgonzi. We'll hear from Robert Saleh. Practices start on Wednesday. What are the 5 biggest questions heading into Titans training camp? We'll give you ours. What are your biggest questions you have heading towards the 2026 season? We'll talk about it coming up next. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelley, next man up, 102.5 The Game. Next man up, 102.5, the game, second hour on this Reaction Monday. We are broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Jake Lyman and Parker Kelley with you. Titans players report to training camp tomorrow, and 102.5 The Game will keep you in the know with player interviews and the latest updates on Titans training camp as the team preps for the 2026-27 season. Coverage of Titans training camp is presented by Tennessee Brewworks, Permanent Energy, and the Music City kickoff game. Veterans report tomorrow. Rookies have been in since Thursday. It is just about go time for the Titans. And this hour, we're going to get into the biggest questions facing the Tennessee Titans heading into training camp. What do we want to find out before kickoff on September 13th against the Jets? Now, I would say for the season, the biggest question, of course, is about Cam Ward. And we're going to get into Cam Ward. But I don't think Cam Ward's story of this season is going to be written in August. It's going to be about the overall progression from Wednesday's first practice all the way to week 18. That's what the story is going to be about. Of course, Cam Ward is a big question heading into training camp. But for me, the number one question heading into this camp is who is starting on the offensive line? Because that's the one true position battle that the Titans have. Yeah, you look, there are guys fighting for spots on the defensive side of the ball, whether that's who's going to get more reps up front on the defensive line as Saleh rotates his guys. You could say nickel might be a big position battle with Marcus Harris. And honestly, I don't really even know who would be beyond him. Maybe some of the undrafted free agents. Third safety would be a pretty big battle. But the one that impacts the game on a play-to-play basis, every single snap on offense, who's playing center, who's playing right guard? That is my biggest question heading into the preseason and training camp. How does that battle sort itself out?
I'm going to take this a different route because I wanted to talk about J.C. Latham, and then I'll address the center right guard stuff.
Yeah.
It is – I'm getting fed up with the situation, if I'm being honest with you. Like, speaking as a fan, not even as a media person, as a fan, I'm really upset about this J.C. Latham stuff. I don't know if unfair is the right word, but this guy played left tackle his first year and is now he flipped over to right tackle last year. Yeah. But we got to know what he is after this year.
Right.
Like we have to know. And again, it may be a little bit unfair, but that's kind of the way life works. You have to prove yourself as a right tackle, as a franchise right tackle this year, and you're missing out on very valuable time. Missing minicamp, missing OTAs is one thing because the pads aren't on, but you're missing valuable time when the pads do come on.
Yeah.
That is extremely frustrating.
No, when you're picked that high, you're going to get excuses, right? Like, you're going to get time and you're going to get patience, but there comes a time where that runs out. Like, we'll talk about this with Cam Ward too. He had a disappointing rookie season, but there's a lot of reasons for that. Now you hope that he grows in year two. With J.C. Latham, year one, of course, it's, oh, well, he flipped over to the left tackle and it wasn't his natural position. And so we're going to give him a pass and he's going to get back to his regular position. And hopefully that's when he takes a big step. And then last year was, well, he was injured. He missed the first 6 weeks. It was tough for him to really get into a groove. He's going to get better. And I thought he did get better down the stretch of last season. But you're right. It's put up or shut up time for J.C. Latham. And I asked Nick Frazier what his concern level was about J.C. Latham starting training camp on the PUP list. I put it at a 4 right now. But I did say every week he misses, put it up another 1. Because this is valuable experience for J.C. Latham. He's going to be playing next to somebody new at right guard. He's playing in a new system with a new offensive line coach. I agree with you. Maybe we expand the biggest question for the Titans heading into training camp. Center and right guard are big, but what is your offensive line going to look like in 2026? You didn't invest in it in the offseason. Is it going to be serviceable at the very least? Just serviceable for this team? And the right side is the big question. From center to right tackle, you really don't know what it's going to look like this year.
Okay, now that the Latham stuff is out of the way, I had to get that off my chest because I saw that news. Was it this weekend or around this weekend when it came out?
It was, Thursday.
It infuriated me. But now with the center stuff, I'm not willing to trust that a guy who didn't start in New York last year, or he started a couple games. But outside of that, and Austin Slotman, he wasn't your guy. And now you bring him over to Tennessee, and he's suddenly going to be the guy next to a right guard who doesn't have a lot of experience, next to a left guard and Peter Skoronski, who he's never played with before. I just don't know if that's going to work.
And I don't think Lloyd Cushenberry was great last year, coming off the Achilles. I don't know how great Kevin Zeitler was. I think he probably graded out better than maybe the eye test would have showed you. Like, just if you're not specifically watching film on the offensive line, you may not have thought Kevin Zeitler played as well as he did. I would have to go back. I know I saw a metric that said Zeitler was one of the better pass blocking right guards in the league last year. I did see yesterday there was somebody made a graphic of the expected points added when running behind a guard tackle tandem. And Moore and Skoronski on the left side were like league average. It was like you didn't really gain much going behind them, but you also didn't really lose much going behind them. They were about league average. J.C. Latham and Kevin Zeitler were the worst tandem in the league, and it was not even close on the right side. Like, I'll show you the graphic. I'll find it during the break here, Parker. It's like they were doubly as bad as the next closest guard tackle tandem when you ran behind them last year. So
yeah, please show me this metric.
So
I haven't seen it.
I don't want to say that it's like, man, you let Zeitler and Cushenberry walk and they were elite last year. They weren't. They were fine at times, maybe good at some things, bad at other things. But you didn't upgrade, or at least you didn't put investment into those spots that on paper makes it look like an upgrade. You brought in 2 backup guys at center and a 6th-round pick, and you brought in a guy who missed all of last year on a 1-year deal, and you're hoping for a 5th-round pick in his 2nd year to take a step. Like, that is what you're looking at on the offensive line right now. And Fernando Carmona, another 5th-round pick in there. That's what you got. You got 3 young guys who were picked in the 5th round or later and a bunch of journeymen. And you're saying one of those guys is starting at center and one of them starting at right guard. Maybe the gamble pays off. Maybe Carmen Brasillo is a wizard and we don't know it yet, and he's going to turn Jackson Slater and Andre James into high-level interior offensive linemen. But until I see it, I'm not believing it. And Peter Skoronski's the only guy you got. He's the only guy you got. Dan Moore is going to be what Dan Moore is. That right side could end up being a disaster. J.C. Latham needs to be an anchor on the right side, and you've got to find serviceable play at center and right guard. And that is my biggest question heading into training camp.
Guys like TD have been much more optimistic than we have, but I thought when we had Nick Suss on from the Tennessee, and he laid it out perfectly, because if the 5 guys that you think are going to be starters this year, and Moore, Skoronski, Schlotman, Volson, and J.C. Latham, okay, that's 5. And then you're going to keep your draft picks over the last 2 years, Fernando Carmona, Pat Coogan as your backup center, and Jackson Slater, that's 8. Assuming they keep, I think,
2 tackles.
Probably 10, right? Deculus, Brandon Crenshaw Dixon, and then I don't know, Andre James. I don't think you're not going to keep 3 centers.
I think I don't think Coogan's starting week 1. So
I don't think so.
I think Schlotman and James are battling for the starting center job, and the loser gets cut, which is just like, that's not where you want to be with your starting center job. It's like, all right, well, one of these guys is going to win it and the other guy's going to be on the street. Like, that's not how you want to build the interior of your offensive
I just
line.
can't see Schlotman getting cut.
I don't know.
I just can't see that.
That's why they have put themselves between a rock and a hard place, because there's just no good answer there. You hope eventually the young guys get it, right? Like, if Coogan by the end of the year is your starting center, that's your dream scenario, I guess. But I don't know if I'm going to put that on a 6th-round rookie. 0474 asks, how can that still be the same question? Year after year, it's the same question for the past 5 years. And it's true. I don't know how they are so bad on the offense, or on paper, they can't get the offensive line right. For a few years, it was you were investing in the offensive line and all the guys were just bad. Isaiah Wilson, Dylan Radins, Nicholas Petit-Frere, Andre Dillard, you traded for Dennis Daly. All those guys, bad. Raden's had his moments, but for the most part, bad players. This offseason, the problem isn't that you invested in bad players. It's that you just didn't invest in any players. And we've said it all offseason long that Mike Borgonzi, I think, has done a lot of good for this roster in his 2 years. The draft picks all look promising, with the exception of maybe Femi Oladejo. But outside of that, I think you like the way he's drafted, with still a lot to prove for his draft picks, of course. I think I like the way he approached free agency in both years. But the one big question mark is the offensive line that really they just stood pat on this year. No top 100 picks on an offensive lineman this year. No big money given out to an offensive lineman this year. If it doesn't work out, that's going to be a really big failure on Mike Borgonzi's report card from this past year.
I haven't been able to wrap my mind around it, because I know Borgonzi's a smart guy. I know he is. I just don't understand the lack of willingness to address something that you're just, because if you don't have an offensive line, I mean, we saw this with Cincinnati when they made the Super Bowl in 22. They had great skill players. They have an elite quarterback. But if you don't have an offensive line to protect, Joe Burrow hasn't been able to stay healthy.
Yep.
And they couldn't win the Super Bowl because that offensive line was so bad.
Yeah.
I can't, and we've learned our lesson. We've learned our lesson. I'm done blindly trusting that something is going to just get better because it's the next football season. This offensive line, at least on paper, I cannot get behind.
We don't know what goes on behind closed doors. We don't know what the negotiations were like in free agency. Did Mike Borgonzi reach out to every free agent center and just all of them didn't want to play in Nashville? Maybe that's the case. I would doubt it. I think there's an amount of money you could have offered to get a quality center in the building. You didn't do it. And you're sitting there with $60 million in cap space, which it's one thing to say you had a limited number of resources and there was only so much you could do. But you still got the resources sitting there, and you didn't use it to upgrade the offensive line. Again, that's going to be the one big thing that Mike Borgonzi, I don't think they're going to make another big change at the end of this season unless it's a complete disaster, right? You've changed a GM or a head coach 4 straight years now. I think you want stability. And I am by no means saying that Mike Borgonzi needs to be fired at the end of this year. But that's the one thing that you've left yourself vulnerable to. If this team is not good and the main reason is because the offensive line is horrible, that's going to point directly at Mike Borgonzi and his front office.
And you're just making it harder for your coaching staff too, because there's only so much you can do without an offensive line, right? Your offensive playbook is basically not only chopped in half, but you're chopping 2/3 of it off because there's so much you can do with that. So you're setting up your coaches where if you don't have the offensive line in place and you're unsure about 4 of the 5 positions, not only are you making their job a lot harder, but they have to basically have the best coaching job of their career.
Yeah. And I'm not thinking I'm smarter than Mike Borgonzi here. And by the end of the year, we could all be looking back and saying, man, what idiots were we? Because you've got Skoronski, Coogan, Slater, and Latham, and all of them look like they're going to be stud offensive linemen for the next half decade to decade. And it's like, oh man, now if you can draft a left tackle, you're set. Maybe that's what happens. I'm going to say, as of what we know right now about the players at center and right guard, and even right tackle with J.C. Latham, I'm going to say I doubt that's going to happen. Jeremy in Clarksville says, how many years before the O-line stops dominating Titans discussions? If the over-under is 3 years, which do you take? Yeah, I don't know. Offensive linemen are hard to find, right? It's not like there's a surplus of great tackles sitting out there. If there were, everybody would figure it out. So the offensive line for almost every team is going to be a topic heading into the season. But yeah, it's been the big glaring red flag for the Titans for, 4 or 5 years now.
Yeah. Seems like we've been talking about the same thing for the last 4 years. The only difference is we have no idea how this offensive line is going to play out in 26.
Right.
But feelings are not great right now.
Right. Again, yeah. Well, we may look back and be like, man, we were idiots for calling out the offensive line. They really figured it out, and Carmen Brasillo did a great job. But it's like, as of now, with the information that we have, I'm going to say I don't feel all that confident in it. So that is my biggest question heading into training camp. What's the offensive line going to look like? Who's starting at center and right guard? And can J.C. Latham get healthy and finally take that next step? We'll continue on. I've got 4 more big questions for training camp. Cam Ward, obviously, is the next one. We'll get into it coming up next. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelley, next man up here on 102.5 The Game. Getting closer to football season, training camps opening up around the NFL. Titans vets report tomorrow, first practice on Wednesday. It is almost here. We are going through the biggest questions facing the Titans heading into training camp. We'll take your thoughts on our phone and text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Be a part of the conversation, 615-737-1025. You can text or call. So we went through the offensive line. That is my biggest question heading into training camp. Who's starting? And J.C. Latham, as Parker mentioned, does he take that next step? Does he get healthy starting at training camp on the PUP list? Number 2 has to be Cam Ward. How does Cam Ward progress in this new offense? We were part of the It's June coalition back during OTAs of let's not overreact to a couple of errant throws and a couple of mistakes during OTAs and minicamp. But the closer you get to the season, the more those things start to matter. And it's not going to be perfect. There are going to be bad days for Cam Ward, bad reps for Cam Ward, but you need to see progress in this Brian Daboll offense. You need to see him starting to play faster, look more comfortable, get chemistry with his new wide receivers, especially Carnell Tate. So how does Cam Ward progress in this new offense throughout training camp into the preseason to the point where you feel comfortable that he's going to take a jump in year 2 when you get to week 1?
Yeah, we not dismissed, but didn't put a lot of stock into what happened in June and those months leading up to where we are now. But now the pads will be coming on. We'll get a better glimpse at how everything will look. It is still not the season, so we shouldn't have the panic meter all the way up at 10 if things go waywards and sideways. But it is a better glimpse of where Cam Ward will be once the season gets here. Now, I have been on the record of saying that with these option routes that Brian Daboll has in his offense, right, those 5 to 7 yards, find the window, I think that is going to be very beneficial for Cam Ward because what we talked about in the last segment with the offensive line, if you don't have the protection, you don't have a choice but to get the ball out quicker.
Yep.
So Cam Ward is going to do that. But I'm just curious to know how everything else will look. Will Cam Ward start hitting the deep passes? If it's play action, 1, will he have the protection to do so? And 2, will he throw an accurate ball that allows his receiver to run under it? That's what I'm interested in seeing.
Yeah, the deep accuracy for Cam Ward was one of the bigger issues in his rookie season, and we did see some examples of that, or at least saw reports of it during OTAs. So with Cam Ward, I said it in the last segment, it's not my biggest question heading into training camp because training camp preseason, important for Cam Ward and his growth, especially in a new offense with a lot of new pieces. But whether Cam Ward takes a jump this year, we're not going to know by the end of training camp. The offensive line is a bigger question because we're going to get a lot of answers once the pads come on. First off, who's going to be playing up front and how good are the players playing up front going to be in 2026? So number 2, how well can Cam Ward progress in this new offense throughout training camp to gear up for week 1 against the Jets? In that same neighborhood, how good is Carnell Tate really? Heading into OTAs, he was a guy that everybody had their microscope on because after the draft, he was a surprise pick at number 4, maybe not viewed as that elite wide receiver prospect that you talk about taking in the top 5, your Jamar Chases, your Calvin Johnsons, that type of prospect. Carnell Tate wasn't viewed as that. Then he comes into the offseason program and was a human highlight reel. Rave reviews from pretty much everyone who was out there at those practices and OTAs and minicamp of what Carnell Tate was doing. Made a great first impression. Can he build on it? There's still work to do. We've seen before these guys who in shorts and t-shirts can make plays and you get all excited about them, and then they kind of disappear when you get into the real moments there. Carnell Tate's progression, how he can get on the same page with Cam Ward, and if he can continue to look like a future star in the making, that's going to be big in training camp for Carnell Tate.
I was standing right there on the sidelines when Carnell Tate made the one-handed catch, and yeah, my eyes got wide. It was impressive. The hands were on full display. At the same time, it's a lot easier when it's routes on air and you don't have pads on. Nothing constricts your range of movement with your arms. It's a lot easier to do that stuff. So if we're going to have conversations with Cam Ward about, well, it's only June,
right?
I believe we have to have similar conversations in the same vein about Carnell Tate. And the expectations are going to be so high because he was a 4th overall pick.
Yep.
So I've set the baseline. If he's healthy, I want 1,000 yards this year. So the expectations are going to be high, rightfully so. When you draft a guy that high, I'm interested to see how it looks.
Yeah, I think you put it perfectly we're going to sit there and when Cam Ward struggles, we're going to say it's only June. He's got time to figure this out. All right, well, training camp in the preseason is the time to figure it out and start to get rolling. With Carnell Tate, we also said it's only June. Let's not get too excited about the young wide receiver. but he can really start to back it up in these open practices and into the joint practices and the preseason games if he keeps making plays. I think that there's a chance that the hype factor for Carnell Tate could be sky high heading into the season if he looks the way he did in the offseason program, but he still has to go out there and prove it day in and day out throughout training camp. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. What are your biggest questions heading into Titans training camp? Veterans report tomorrow. Practices get started on Wednesday. We've got 2 more for you coming up next. Then we'll get to your reaction. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelley with you on this Monday morning. Next man up, 102.5 The Game. Next man up, 102.5 The Game. Training camp gets rolling tomorrow. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelley with you, talking Titans on this Reaction Monday. Going through the biggest questions facing the Titans as they begin training camp, gearing up for the new season. We are, 2.5 weeks away from the first preseason game?
The Hall of Fame game.
Well, yeah, right. We're less than that away from the Hall. We're a week and a half away from the Hall of Fame.
Is that
game.
August 6th?
August 6th, yes. Panthers, Cardinals. So
be dialed in for that one.
We are 10 days away from the Hall of Fame game, 17 days away from the Titans preseason opener against San Francisco on a Thursday night in Santa Clara. So it'll be here before we know it. We're 6 weeks away or so from actual football getting underway. But we're going through the biggest questions. So far, we've got offensive line as a whole. Who's starting? What does J.C. Latham look like? When will he get back on the field is also a big question as he starts the camp on the PUP list. Number 2, how does Cam Ward progress in the new offense after some offseason struggles? What can he do in training camp with Brian Dable and the new pieces? Kind of in the same vein, how good is Carnell Tate going to be? Really great first impression. Can he build on it throughout training camp once we get deeper into the joint practices where we've gone through it? He's going to face some very talented cornerbacks in those practices and into the preseason. Number 4, let's flip over to the defensive side. How do these new additions on defense look, especially in a Robert Saleh system? This is a new look defense. You've still got some of your key pieces there. Jeffrey Simmons, of course, in the middle on your defensive line. Amani Hooker on the back end. You've got Cedric Gray and Cody Barton back as your linebackers with Anthony Hill mixed in there. But for the most part, this is a really new look defense with a lot of new pieces. On the defensive line, John Franklin Myers, Keldrick Falk, Jermaine Johnson, Jacob Martin, all coming in and expected to play roles this year. In the secondary, Alante Taylor, Cordell Flott. Kevin Winston isn't a new piece, but we didn't see a ton of him last year. He's going to be expected to step into a big-time starting role this season. You've got Tony Adams. You've got Anthony Hill at linebacker. This is going to be a really new-look unit. Are all of those new pieces, whether it's draft picks, whether it's big price tag free agents, are they all going to fit together and be able to take a big leap forward on that side of the ball?
Yeah, the floor of this roster has been raised from what it has been the last 2 years with the pieces that they've brought in. Still question marks along the group that you have specifically with the edge rushers. I'm not as concerned about the interior of that defensive line. Obviously, when you have Jeffrey Simmons and John Franklin Myers playing next to each other, and then you have, guys like Solomon Thomas who can rotate within that interior defensive line. But you have Jermaine Johnson, who is coming off of that ACL second year of that. The Achilles, I'm sorry. Yep. Yes. So you expect him to have a better year than what he had last year, but opposite of him, it appears to be Jordan Elliott, which is, okay, right?
They're going to rotate a ton. So, I don't know if you can necessarily look and say, all right, you've got edge 1, edge 2, edge 3, edge 4. I think it's going to be more of a mixture, a rotation of all those guys combined. Johnson, Falk, Franklin Myers will play on the edge sometimes. You've got Femi. If it seems like he's healthy heading into camp after missing some time in the offseason with a hamstring. Who else is on the outside there?
Jacob Femi Martin and Keldrick Falk, which there are both question marks with them. Right. Keldrick Falk wasn't a guy that got to the passer, or when he did, he just wasn't able to finish. And then with Femi, he missed basically the entirety of last year with injury.
Right. I don't think it's going to be like a tiered system with those guys of like, all right, it's not going to be Johnson and Falk each have 9 sacks. And then you've got the next tier with Femi and Martin, and they each have 4. I think it's going to be like, they all end up with like 5 to 7, right? I think that's the way Robert Saleh wants to use his pass rushers, especially when the dominant guy you have is on the interior. You keep those guys on the edge fresh. They're going to get one-on-one matchups. We know that Jeffrey Simmons is going to draw attention. John Franklin Myers is going to draw attention. So I do think that those edge guys are going to be used as a unit combined rather than having 1 or 2 big name players on the edge. In the secondary, the cornerback room it looks better on paper. Will that translate to the field? Alante Taylor surely seems to think so. Did you see his tweet last night, Parker?
I did.
1-8 and 2-4, best cornerback duo in 2026. I'll be back at the end of the season, and we can discuss how we made it all happen. So
better back it up.
I like the confidence.
I do too. You got to have confidence. But at the same time, if you're going to say something like that, you got to back it up.
See, I like that type of confidence rather than the confidence we saw from L'Jarius Sneed with Nico Collins. Who? Last year? Like, there's confidence, there's arrogance. I think that we saw some arrogance from L'Jarius Sneed, and it came back to bite. Everybody's got a little PTSD because of the Sneed trade. You bring in a Wouzier as a free agent, and both those guys flamed out within a year. Taylor and Flott both are getting big deals. $20 million a year for Taylor, $15 million a year for Flott, and neither of them would be viewed as an elite cornerback around the NFL. And I don't think you need them to be. You're going to have to draft a young cornerback early in the next few years to build up that room for the long term. But I do think if you can get, God, was that what, 2019, 2018, when you had like Malcolm Butler and Adoree Jackson lining up across from each other? I don't think anyone would call those guys elite players at cornerback, but they were solid starters, and that team was productive with them playing on the outside. That's what you need from Taylor and Flott. You need those guys to just be above average starting players. Be a player that you go out there and you say, that's not a liability. Now, Alontae Taylor's not going to be Patrick Surtain, where you can have him follow Garrett Wilson around the entire field in week one, and he's going to end up with 2 catches for 14 yards. You can't expect that because that's not the type of players these guys have proven to be. But I think you do need to expect them to be above average starting level players, and you don't look at the defense and say, man, anytime the Titans face a good wide receiver, they're in for a long day. They've got to be competitive with the top guys around the league.
I look at Alontae Taylor and Cordell Flott as 2 guys you bring in from free agency who will contribute right away to kind of pave the way until the Titans are able to draft more guys in that secondary to be able to develop them. I'm interested to see how Kevin Winston plays this year because there are high expectations for him.
TD's big on him.
Most people believe he would have been a first-round pick if he didn't have the ACL at Penn State. So big expectations for him in year 2. There's a lot of talk about Marcus Harris at that nickel position. So with the corners, I actually think that I would feel more comfortable with this tandem than I would when you were talking about Malcolm Butler and Adoree Jackson, because people around the league are very high on the Cordell Flott signing.
Yes, the Giants wanted to keep him. That was widely reported when the contract came down that the Giants thought they had him. They really wanted to keep him. They thought he was an ascending player, and he ends up coming to Nashville to play in a Robert Saleh defense. So I'm excited to see those cornerbacks this year. I do think that there's a little hesitation when it comes to thinking those guys are going to be productive players because we've seen high price tag cornerbacks come in here and flame out before. But I do think that those guys are upgrades for sure over what the Titans had at that position last year. You mentioned Winston at safety. You think Amani Hooker can take a step back to where he was this year, hopefully with better players around him. Nickel's a question with Marcus Harris there right now, and you didn't address that in the draft or in free agency. You do have some depth at corner, Josh Williams, Micah Robinson. So your guy, Keedrain Callaghan, possibly making the team. So,
close eye on him at training camp on Wednesday. Close eye on him.
Him and who's the Houston guy? Latrell McCutcheon. Those are some of the undrafted free agents to keep an eye on in the secondary. But overall, I think the defense is going to be better. You add more talent and you add a proven defensive mind in Robert Saleh, and he's going to be calling plays this year, which he didn't do in New York. So I'm excited to see what the defense can do. I do think that they are going to be a good unit this year. Does that mean elite? Does that mean top 5 in the league? No, but I think you're going to look back and say the Titans defense was a top 15 defense in the league. Can the offense do enough to get you some wins when you don't have to score 30 points a game? You might only have to score 21 to 24 points in a given game to go get a win. Can the offense do that? Because I think the defense is going to be good enough to keep this team in games.
Well, and if the front 7 can get to the quarterback faster, that makes the secondary's job a lot easier, right? They kind of yin and yang that way. in Saleh's system, we've talked about this. It's proven to work. It worked in New York. It worked both stints in San Francisco. So it's proven. It's not like this is something that he just made up, right?
Yep.
He pulled this from other coaches that he worked with, and this has been a proven system. So that'll make the job for the secondary a lot easier. I think the word that I'd like to use to describe this secondary unit is serviceable. I don't know if you share the same way that I feel about Amani Hooker. He wasn't great last year. He wasn't bad. He's all right.
Yeah.
I'm not like incredibly high on Amani Hooker.
Yeah.
So if he can just be serviceable this year, I think that'll be okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think this secondary, if I had to pick a weak point on the defense, it would be the secondary. I think the front four is going to be good, and the rotation Saleh has. I think the linebacking group is going to be better this year. The secondary, there are, I don't want to use the word question marks again because I feel like that's too vague. Like, you need to see it. They've got to go prove it to you, but there are pieces that make you feel optimistic that the secondary will be better this year. Winston, Taylor, Flott. Can Harris take a step? Can Hooker get back? I mean, I think you could end up looking at this team and say like that, the my man catch no balls secondary with Kerry Coombs, like Byard was obviously a star at that point, but the rest of that group was Kenny Vaccaro and Malcolm Butler, Adoree Jackson, Logan Ryan. None of those guys were superstars, but they were good players. And overall, that defense played well that year. So I think maybe you could be looking at something similar. 615-737-1025. We'll wrap up our biggest questions around Titans training camp coming up next. Training camp opens up tomorrow. We'll hear from Mike Borgonzi. We'll hear from Robert Saleh. Practice gets going on later this week. So we will get into all of the hot topics around Titans training camp here to wrap up hour number 2. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelley, next man up. 102.5 The Game. Next man up, 102.5 The Game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelley with you, finishing up the second hour on this Reaction Monday. Training camp gets kickstarted tomorrow. We'll hear from Mike Borgonzi. We'll hear from Robert Saleh. Practice gets going on Wednesday. And man, we'll be into it. I believe first practice open to fans is Saturday, I want to say. And then a week from Friday is the stadium practice, and then we're into the preseason. It's going to go by quick. We're going through our biggest questions heading into training camp, and I got one more. And Dustin from Hopkinsville actually beat me to it on the text line. I asked for what are all of your biggest questions heading into training camp, and number 5 for me is, what are the Titans going to do with Will Levis? I think when you look at this roster, it's not that hard to pick and choose who's going to be on it. Like, I was going through last week, TD put out his training camp preview, Parker, and in there he put a way too early 53-man roster projection. And there aren't a whole lot of positions where I look at it and I'm like, yeah, there's a handful of guys competing for a couple of spots there. Like, you could look at the back end of the running back room. I think it'll be Mullings, who's running back 4 if they keep it, but Chestnut's still in there, and he's one of the cockroaches who always sticks around. Wide receiver 6, Bryce Oliver, I would say, is the leader in the clubhouse, but yeah, KJ Osborne, maybe even Xavier Restrepo are in that conversation. But up and down the roster, I think you kind of have 50 of the 53 guys. You're like, all right, they're going to be on the team. Will Levis, and whether the Titans keep a third quarterback, is very intriguing to me. I don't think they will. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I know that you can have the emergency third quarterback, and that is helpful in some ways because you can keep an extra player active on game day, but you still have to burn that spot on the 53. And maybe that means you don't get to keep an extra offensive lineman who could help you. Maybe that means you don't get to keep another defensive lineman. We know how much Robert Saleh loves his depth there. Maybe you can't keep a 4th tight end in Jaron Kanik. So I'm going to guess they only keep Ward and Trubisky. The question just becomes, what do you do with Will Levis? Can he raise his value during the preseason? You would kind of hope so, right? I know he's going to be playing with the 3s, but he's also going to be playing against the 3s when you get into preseason games, right? Like, he's going to get probably third quarter, maybe into the 4th. I don't know how much you'll see Hendon Hooker in the preseason. So Will Levis is going to have some showcase moments in these preseason games against third-string players on other teams, guys who may not even make the roster in other places. If he looks good, you could possibly trade him for a draft pick. And so I'd say that's the most likely scenario, is that you trade him. I don't know what the pick would look like. I think you're not getting anything above a day 3 pick. I can promise you that, right? Like, I would say a 5th round pick is optimistic for Will Levis. But I think if I had to guess how it turns out at the end of training camp, that's probably where it goes, is he gets traded for a 5th or a 6th round pick or a pick swap of some sort, and they give him a chance to go back up somewhere else and maybe raise his value as he heads towards free agency.
Here's where my mind goes. I agree with TD. I think they are going to keep Levis on the 53. I understand your point, though, about it burns a roster spot that you could use on another, position group of value. But let's say they only kept 2. They kept Cam Ward, they kept Mitchell Trubisky, and then I don't know if they would, waive Will Levis or try to get him on the practice squad. But if he gets to the point where you're not keeping him on the 53, and then that allows another team to sign him before, because you never know what happens, right? You never know. A team may want to claim him. You could end up putting him on your practice squad. But if he gets claimed by another team after he doesn't make the 53, then you would have wasted any value that would have been there.
Yeah, that's the question. Is there value in Will Levis?
I tend to think there is.
That's what I would guess too. I think there are traits that you really like with Will Levis. Like, in terms of arm talent, that's what you want in a quarterback. He can make throws that a lot of people can't make. The mental side of the game and the consistency haven't been there. I think the personality stuff was overblown. That was what they attributed to his fall in the draft, was some of the personality stuff. I think that's overblown.
I mean, if you're a good football player, your personality, I mean, people don't think as much. Caleb Williams walks around drinking a matcha before every game and he paints his fingernails, but he was a top 10 quarterback according to ESPN.
Right.
Do you really care?
Right. So again, I think that stuff is overblown, but like, as much as there are green flags for Will Levis, the size, the frame, the arm talent, I think there's also red flags with Will Levis. You've just got to see if there's value out there for him. But yeah, like I don't think keeping him is worth it when he's going to end up just being your emergency third quarterback, and he's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. If there's any value in Will Levis, take what you can get, because he's going somewhere else.
Could you get a 6th round? Justin Fields went for a 6th round.
Well, like Malik Willis went for a 7th.
True.
And it's like,
and look, I mean, he just got a huge deal with Miami.
Right. And Malik Willis, all the credit to him. He has taken the coaching. He looks like a better player. I don't know if he's a franchise quarterback at the NFL level, but he has taken a huge step forward in his development.
It just shows if you get a guy in the right system and you develop them properly, that they can turn you around.
And I think Will Levis is a more talented player than Malik Willis. Now, they're talented in different ways, but I think if you're looking at a ball of clay to mold for one of these quarterback gurus, Will Levis has a whole lot of good things to work with. And so I do think he's going to be worth something at the end of training camp, especially, like I said, in these preseason games, including one on national television. He's going to be playing against the threes. Like, he should look good out there, and he should look like an improved player, because he's playing against guys who are probably going to be on a practice squad at the beginning of the year. That should raise his value. Teams should see something they like, and you should be able to get something for it. We obviously just have to see how it plays out, because he's got to go out there and prove that he has the tools that other teams might be looking for.
But there's also the flip side too, because if you do trot him out there, and how much do you think he's going to play, first of all? But what if he doesn't look good?
Yeah,
I would try to trade him
right
before.
That's the flip side of the coin, is like, if he doesn't look good and he's throwing picks left and right, and it's like, man, Will Levis is playing against the threes and he still looks the same. Yeah, then he might not have much value to another team. So
because at practice, and again, it was just June, right? But at the same time, he probably had the best throw of every practice, but then he also had the worst throw on top of it.
Yeah. And that's
not much looked different.
That's the Will Levis experience.
Not much looked different.
So we're going to have to see what training camp and preseason looks like. But I think those are my 5 questions, ending with Will Levis there. My 5 biggest questions heading into training camp. Offensive line. What does it look like? Who's starting? And J.C. Latham, massive part of that as well, if he can get healthy and start to take that next step. Cam Ward. What can Cam Ward do in training camp to show the progress in this new offense that he's gearing up for a big step in year 2? How good is Carnell Tate? Great first impression. Can he build on it in training camp? 4, what do all of the defensive additions look like under Robert Saleh? You bring in a lot of new pieces. How does it all mesh together? And number 5, what happens with Will Levis? Is he on the team? Is he traded? Is he cut? We'll find out. All of those are big questions heading into training camp, which gets underway tomorrow. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. Chip from Mount Juliet says playing against threes is not a valid argument. He has threes in front of him and special teams players as well. Levis was not given a fair shake with the coaching staff. Sure, yeah. Will Levis, you look back now and you probably say that Brian Callahan had a large reason to do with him not looking very good in year 2. But he also had multiple opportunities to go prove he's the guy, and he couldn't stop turning the ball over. I know he's playing with threes too, but if you're a guy who should be able to start in the NFL, which that's what he's going to try and do the rest of his career, is go find a place where he can revitalize his career and have a chance to start again, you should be able to beat third-string secondary players, even if you've got third-string wide receivers. Like, there should be openings to go make plays. And again, if there's not, then you're looking and you're saying, all right, well, Will Levis, maybe not the guy that we thought he might be. 615-737-1025. Obviously, in terms of value to another team, we know that he's not the franchise guy here. 615-737-1025. We'll get to some of your reaction in hour number 3, get to some other stories around the NFL, including old friend Tavondre Sweat not going to be ready for training camp with the New York Jets. We'll do all of it coming up in the final hour of the show. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelley, next man up, 1025 The Game. Next man up, 1025, The Game. Final hour on this Reaction Monday, brought to you by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville. We are broadcasting live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Titans training camp opens up this week. We went through our biggest questions facing the Titans heading into training camp. The last one was about Will Levis and what's going to be his fate. Does he stay here for the final year of his rookie contract and then walk and hopefully find an opportunity next year? Do the Titans trade him like Malik Willis? Go get what you can get for him, whatever it is, a fifth, a sixth, a seventh, and see if he can develop behind the scenes and get a chance to start next year. All on the table. He could even be cut. Like, I don't think that's completely off the table that Will Levis is just waived and maybe gets back to the practice squad, maybe gets claimed somewhere else. I have no idea. Rick texted in and says, with Brian Daboll, there's a good chance this is the best Will Levis will ever look. So there's a chance that you could get a 5th round pick. He mentions the Packers as a good landing spot for Will Levis, just like Malik was. I know that excites Robbie. Let's see. What does the Packers depth chart look like? I don't know who they replaced Malik Willis with this offseason. Oh, it's my friend, Tyrod Taylor. I love Tyrod.
In Green Bay?
Yeah. The Green Bay Packers have 2 Hokies quarterbacks on their team. Kyron Drones is there too. Wow. That might be a first.
Kyle McCord's there.
Kyle McCord. Wait,
How
man,
about that?
what a room. Jordan Love.
What happened to Sean Clifford?
Yeah, I don't know. Where is Sean
Did
Clifford?
he get the boot?
I think he got the.
He is with the Bengals now. So I guess he's the 4th string quarterback in Cincy. Because it's Burrow, obviously. Flacco's still there. They've got Josh Johnson still playing football. And Sean Clifford. By the way, I've mentioned before to you, Parker, I think, right, that one of Vandy women's basketball's freshmen is Josh Johnson's daughter.
I had no idea.
Yeah. So
the Josh Johnson?
Yeah, Josh Johnson, journeyman quarterback extraordinaire.
20-year NFL vet?
Yep. So, yeah, his daughter is going to be a freshman for Vandy this year.
I guess he's not a 20-year NFL vet because he spent some time in the UFL, might have even played in the CFL too.
He's been all over the place.
He has.
He is
What a career.
They've got
AFL.
Joe Burrow's got Joe Flacco and Josh Johnson backing him up along with Sean Clifford this year. So, yeah, Green Bay maybe could be an option. I've got to say, Kyron Drones, probably not making that team. Kyle McCord, I don't know. Was fine.
If they keep 3.
At Ohio State and then Syracuse.
Kyle McCord's more of a pro-style quarterback than Kyron Drones is.
Yes, he is. Yeah, Kyron Drones could play tight end. Maybe he does the Logan Thomas route that worked out for him coming out of Virginia Tech as a quarterback, switched to tight end. He made himself a pretty good career. Kyron Drones is a big dude.
He is a big dude. He's got a good physique. So I think I'm right in saying this. I think Kyron Drones is the cousin of Cam Ward.
Yes, he is. Yep. It was them and Shador who were working out together in the offseason a couple of years ago. So what a group. Yeah, I think Green Bay could end up being a landing spot for Levis. Maybe like Tyrod Taylor gets hurt or something like that and you want to go get a backup. I could see it happening. We also got a text also from Rick. He said he thinks the biggest story of training camp is going to be Xavier Restrepo outplaying Wan'Dale Robinson in training camp this year. Got to say, that's high expectations
not
for
gonna
Strep.
happen. I love Xavier Restrepo. It's not going to happen.
I like Restrepo, and I do like what we've seen. And I don't know if you saw it. You were on vacation last week, Parker. A little bit of a cryptic text from Xavier, or a tweet from Xavier Restrepo. He put 4.45 on his Twitter, maybe saying he ran a 4.45 40. I don't know. Maybe the speed has gone up. But Xavier Restrepo is going to be one of those players that we all are paying attention to in training camp in the preseason. I don't think he's making the team. We went through this with TD last week of you've got 5 locks to be on your team at wide receiver. Tate, Robinson, Ridley, Iamaner, DK. All those guys are making the team. You're probably not keeping 7. And the biggest thing, if you're the 6th wide receiver, you probably got to do something on special teams. And Xavier Restrepo hasn't proven that he is a plus special teamer. Bryce Oliver has. So that's why I'm giving him that edge. KJ Osborne got a lot of reps in the offseason with Calvin Ridley not participating in team drills. Maybe he is more likely to steal that spot. I like Xavier Restrepo. I think he's more likely to be the cockroach on the practice squad that replaces Mason Kinsey, who's kind of just around, maybe gets a game day call up once or twice a year, but that's it, rather than a guy who's ever going to make a 53. I'd be happy to be wrong. It'd be great if you could get even moderate production from an undrafted free agent, but I'm going to say I don't think he makes the team.
Well, Bryce Oliver is a very valuable when it comes to special teams, but he also has to compete with KJ Osborne, who in the very least is an NFL veteran, and Mason Kinsey has obviously stayed around too. So it's funny that we're having the same conversation we had last year about Xavier Restrepo making this. I think it's going to be the exact same thing where he's close, but could end up on the practice squad once again.
So I will say we probably were overhyping Restrepo way too much last year. And I think that's across the board. Not everybody, but I think everybody was getting excited about Restrepo just because of the Cam Ward connection. And to be fair, before the 40 time, Xavier Restrepo was going to get drafted. He was a draft pick with the production that he had at Miami. The 40 time knocked him out of the draft because it was that bad. It was, he ran what, a 4.8, something like that, 4.83.
Yep.
So that knocked him out of the draft. People were excited because they thought the Titans got a steal. And I remember the offseason program and mini camp, he was flashing. And people were like, oh man, did the Titans just get themselves an unbelievable steal late in the draft who's going to be your slot receiver? He could be Julian Edelman or Wes Welker. Now, both those guys did take some time to develop, but that's beside the point. And then he disappeared completely once training camp and the preseason rolled around. Like, I don't even remember him making a catch in the preseason last year. Maybe he did.
I think he had one in Tampa Bay, maybe? Or it might have been a target.
Let me see. So Xavier Restrepo, I don't even know if I can find like preseason stats from him. Let's see. Game logs. No. He played in 2 games last year. He had 3 catches for 41 yards. Yeah, I don't know if I can even find the preseason statistics. I don't remember him making any plays in the preseason. So I think it might be similar. I think he's going to do more this year. I think he's developed more as a player, but he's still probably your 7th, 8th, 9th best receiver on this team. He's not going to make the 53 if I had to guess right now, but I think he's going to be closer than he was last year.
I think that is fair because this offense that Brian Daboll runs is very conducive for a guy like that who doesn't have the speed unless he actually did run a 4.4 and nobody knows about that yet. But it's very conducive for working in short space, finding the open grass.
Yeah.
So that does benefit him more than the offense that Callahan ran last year. So he's got that going for him. But at the same time, if it comes down to Oliver and Xavier Restrepo, neither guy is going to play a whole lot. I'm looking at the guy that contributes more on special teams, and right now that is Bryce Oliver.
Yep, I would take Oliver over Restrepo right now. That can change based on what we see in training camp and in the preseason games. But and Rick is saying Mason Kinsey and Xavier Restrepo, that he would take Restrepo, saying I can guarantee you Mason Kinsey didn't play at the school that had receivers like Michael Irving and Reggie Wayne and set records. And it's true. And
is he dissing on Berry College?
Yeah, I guess so.
Hey, that's a Division III powerhouse.
That is
right
a
there.
D3 powerhouse. And I'm going to put Strep above Kinsey right now. I think Xavier Restrepo, based on what we've seen, can be pushed up to that like bubble adjacent spot near the roster. And I think if you had to choose on the practice squad between Kinsey and Restrepo, I'd probably take Restrepo. But I wouldn't take Restrepo over Oliver right now because Oliver's a really good gunner. And that's what you need to see. All right, here are the stats for Xavier Restrepo in the 2025 preseason. Big thanks to 2765 for passing these along. Against the Buccaneers, 0 catches. Against the Falcons, 2 catches for 18 yards. Against the Vikings, 1 catch for 8 yards. So in 3 preseason games, he had 3 catches for 26 yards. And we talk about going up against the 3s and the 4s. He still couldn't be productive. We'll see what he can do this year. But I do remember last year, there was a whole bunch of hype at this time of like, what's Xavier Restrepo going to do in training camp? And then we never heard about him. And then he ended up on the practice squad.
I see a similar thing playing out this year. It'll be closer than it was last year, just on the outside looking in, because there are just so many, like they're probably going to keep 9 offensive line, going to keep 6 wide receivers, maybe 3-4 running backs, 3 quarterbacks.
Yeah, I think
roster math, I mean, it just doesn't work.
I think the back end of the running back and tight end room, like if that's what you're choosing between keeping a 4th running back, a 4th tight end, or a 7th wide receiver, give me Canick or Mullings, who you spend a draft pick on. They can help in special teams. Whereas Restrepo, yeah, like he can be the backup slot for Wan'Dale Robinson, but I think the way that Daboll likes to use Wan'Dale Robinson, you're not really going to need Xavier Restrepo. You can say that he's a better route runner, that he might be better offensively than Bryce Oliver, but how many snaps on offense does the 6th wide receiver get? Not many.
I mean, I know Bryce Oliver was hurt last year, but he probably wasn't going to play a whole lot anyway.
Right. how many snaps does the 6 wide receiver get on special teams? A lot.
A lot.
So that's going to be the determining factor. 615-737-1025. The game text line is driven by Wilson County Hyundai, online at wilsoncountyhyundai.com. Be a part of the conversation. You can call or text us. Again, it's 615-737-1025. We'll stick with the NFL. Our old friend Tavondre Sweat starting training camp on the non-football injury list. It's early. We haven't seen him suit up, and I'm sure he'll be on the field looking for some revenge in week 1. But this trade, I liked it when it happened, and the closer we get to the season, I feel like I like it more and more. 615-737-1025. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelley, next man up, 1025 The Game. Next man up, 102.5 The Game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelley with you. It's a reaction Monday. Less reaction today. More preparation as we get ready for Titans training camp. Veterans report tomorrow. Again, press conference, I believe, right at noon. So right after we get off the air tomorrow with Mike Borgonzi and Robert Saleh, get to hear their thoughts early on about what this team's going to look like. It being at noon, right? That Parker, I'm correct there, right? Tomorrow, presser at noon with those two?
Yes.
Sadly, that means Big Joe won't be able to ask his annual question that went viral last year. I'm disappointed. He might have to get a proxy asker out there.
I was sitting right next to him when he asked that question, and I could feel Brinker and Borgonzi both looking at me. I'm like, guys, I didn't ask the question.
I mean, it was that press conference last year. It was the pre-training camp press conference, and Big Joe, he warned everybody on the show that he was going to do it, and he said, can this team that you put on the field tomorrow win the Super Bowl? And Chad Brinker starts laughing. Mike Borgonzi says that's the goal for every team every year in the NFL, but we know we have a lot of work to do on this roster, I believe was the gist of his answer. So sadly, unless Big Joe's missing the show tomorrow, which maybe he's that dedicated to the craft of being able to ask that question. I don't know. I'll have to ask him. But yeah, that maybe they scheduled it that way on purpose. They're like, all right, if we put it right at noon, Big Joe Dubin can't come out and ask us if we're going to win the Super Bowl this year.
Do you think they were expecting that question? Because maybe there was a chance they were listening to the program. Because I remember Big Joe saying, I'm going to ask this question.
I don't think Joe said what the question was. I might be wrong. I don't think he said what the question was on the air. He just said, I have one question that I ask to the coach and the GM every year to start training camp, and I'm going to do it. And it went viral. All of the aggregator accounts, Ari Myrov, Dove, or whatever, they all had that clip of Joe asking that question. So we will see. Maybe he's got somebody who's going to do his work for him and ask that question.
Maybe he has delegated the task to somebody else.
It's possible. It's possible. News Titans adjacent over the weekend. T'Vondre Sweat starting the preseason training camp on the non-football injury list. And I didn't see exactly what this was, but it being the non-football injury list makes you question just like, man, what happened? I can't see anything specifically on Twitter about like what he did or what the injury is, but it is kind of funny to look at this and see, all right, well, he's already not a hamstring. Okay. Hamstring for T'Vondre Sweat. That it's making this trade look better and better as it gets further. When I was thinking about this last night, I wrote down, I think this could turn out to look like the DGB trade. Second round pick that you brought in that had an insane amount of talent, right? Like DGB, when you drafted him, ridiculously talented player. And I would say T'Vondre Sweat, maybe not ridiculously talented, but that is a big man who can move faster than he should at his size. And when you look at the way the Titans were scheming up their defense under Denard Wilson, he should have had a role and probably should have been more productive in his 2 years based on the talent that he has. You make that trade to go get somebody who's more reliable. Maybe not going to be a superstar, but more reliable. Dennis Kelly in the DGB trade. I think a lot of people might have looked at that and said, man, you're getting a swing tackle for your second round pick at wide receiver. But then you look back down the road and you're like, man, Dennis Kelly, that dude was reliable when you needed him to play. He was great. He eventually stepped in and was your starting right tackle. And DGB flamed out pretty much immediately. I do wonder, maybe not an exact comparison, but I wonder if we're going to look back on this trade the same way of you traded away a guy who may have been more talented, but just had those off the field character issues. You didn't know if he was going to be in shape. And you go get a guy like Jermaine Johnson, who's probably never going to be a superstar or an all-pro player, but I think he's going to be reliable. And that's something that you couldn't say for T'Vondre Sweat.
All due respect to T'Vondre Sweat, it didn't. If you had a pulse, you could see that this trade was coming because when Robert Saleh was introduced as the Titans head coach, the first 2 words out of his mouth were fast and violent, fast and violent.
Yep.
Again, all due respect to T'Vondre Sweat, he does not fit those 2 categories.
Yeah.
So getting a guy in Jermaine Johnson who has played with Saleh before, knows the system already, again, like we talk about with Jim Knowles in Tennessee, that eases the learning curve for everybody else. And he's going to be a very reliable defensive end for you, edge rusher this year. So I think that is a very fair comparison, what you made to Dorial Green-Beckham.
It's just the first thing that came to mind with me because it's like, yeah, you're really disappointed because you spent a high second-round pick on both those players. And it's like you expected them to be linchpins for your team. And obviously it didn't work out, and you hate to give up on them after just 2 years. But the variable outcomes with T'Vondre Sweat were just so wide, right? Like, sure, he could figure it out and be a dominant force next to Jeffrey Simmons. But he also doesn't really fit in your scheme anymore with the way Robert Saleh uses his defensive linemen. And that was a question that was asked to Saleh, and he kind of brushed it off and said, oh, he fits. Clearly he didn't because they traded him a couple of days later. But I think this was the right move. We said it at the time. You go out and get a guy that Saleh's familiar with, that he's comfortable with, that's played in this system, and has shown to be a productive player. Not a great player, not an elite player, but a productive player in this defense. He had 7.5 sacks in his second season playing under Robert Saleh. T'Vondre Sweat, I think, was just too big of a wild card, and you're seeing it already. Non-football injury with the hamstring to start off Jets camp. It's not off to a great start up there in the Meadowlands for Big Meatloaf.
Yeah, no, it's tough, but when you weigh that much, as he does, injuries like that tend to stick around, and they don't really go away.
Right. Those are the nagging ones. The hamstring ones are always tough. Trevor asks, who plays more games this season, J.C. Latham or T'Vondre Sweat? I mean, Latham, I think, would be my guess, right?
Yeah, Latham slimmed down last offseason, so
it's too early to make a judgment on either of them having super injury-plagued seasons, right? Based on what the reporting is right now, J.C. Latham's injury is supposed to be very short-term, and he shouldn't miss a whole lot of time. It's what we're being told. You never know until he's out there in his pads with a helmet on, walking out onto the field, which could happen at any time once he passes a physical. Right now, he's not out there. I'm going to lean Latham just because you're right. Like, the body type for J.C. Latham, he's in better shape. And I think with J.C. Latham, there's more of a will to be out there. With T'Vondre Sweat, I don't know if we've seen that of like, is he going to play through some of these tough things that he might be dealing with? I don't know. But I thought that was telling about the situation with T'Vondre Sweat and why the Titans decided to move on, that he's already not going to be on the field to start off training camp.
I mean, so I watched Rocky 3 this past weekend, and it was when he was getting ready to fight Mr. T, Clubber Lang, and he was training with Apollo. By the way, I hope I'm not spoiling it for anybody, but it's also been out for a long time. So
I think you'll be okay. I think
I'll be okay.
We're past the limit there.
But when Apollo Creed was training Rocky, he was talking about, man, you had the eye of the tiger the first couple of times you were fighting me. Now you don't have it anymore. When you were seeing T'Vondre Sweat at Titans training camp the last 2 years, I didn't see that.
Yeah.
I didn't see that eye of the tiger look with T'Vondre Sweat.
Yeah, I agree with that. A lot of this game is the mental side, the will to be great. And that's what we talk about with Cam Ward. And Robert Saleh said as much with the comment about, I struggle to see a guy who works as hard as he does and has the mindset that he has failing, right? And that's not everybody who plays in the NFL. Sometimes your raw God-given talent can get you there, but can only get you so far. And with T'Vondre Sweat, I liked that Mike Borgonzi pulled the plug and decided to go get somebody who was a better fit culture-wise, but also probably a better fit scheme-wise for what Robert Saleh wants to run out there.
Yeah, I don't think many people were they like this trade.
Yep.
They like this trade in simple terms because they knew that in order to play in Saleh's scheme, when you're running sideline to sideline with T'Vondre Sweat, he can't do that.
Yep.
He can't do that.
Yeah. I think that this will be a trade that favors the Titans long term. They still haven't played snaps with their new teams. Lots can change, but based on what we know right now, I think the Titans might have won this one. And the Titans very well could see Tavondre Sweat week 1 playing for the Jets. I would guess that he will be out there by then. Also, Jarvis Brownlee Jr., going to be lots of revenge games going on in week 1 when the Jets come here to Nashville.
Which, by the way, he's, as of right now, is not projected to be a starter for the Jets.
Sweat?
Or Jarvis Brownlee.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, that trade was one that everybody scoffed at when it happened, and it didn't make a whole lot of sense without context. But as we've gotten further away from it, I think first off, it shows you Mike Borgonzi is not going to deal with guys who aren't a fit in the locker room. And clearly Jarvis Brownlee was causing some problems. But you are right. Yeah, he is not expected to start right now. They bring in D'Angelo Pons, who is probably going to be your starter in the nickel as a rookie. But Brownlee and Sweat will both be out there in week 1. Most likely against the Titans. Robert Saleh facing his former team along with a lot of former Jets, Jermaine Johnson, John Franklin Myers, Tony Adams. Am I missing anybody else who they brought over? I think that's the big group of them. So
because Micah Robinson was here last year.
There'll be some big revenge games in week 1 and in week 3 when the Titans face the 2 New York teams this year. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. We'd love to hear from you. Our phone line's driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Chad just said he found a tweet where Restrepo and his trainer explicitly say he just ran a 4.45 in a video. So it's apparently a very real thing.
I kind of want to ask him.
Yeah, well, yeah, you should. I'm sure that's going to be one of the questions to ask Xavier Restrepo is like, are you running a 4.45 right now?
What did you do to shave 4/10 off your 40
or
time?
Maybe what was wrong with you during the combine where you ran a 4.83?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please provide context.
615-737-1025 is the phone number. We've got a couple more segments left on the show. We'll bounce around a little bit in the final 30 minutes. Some stories around the NFL. Some tough ones, including this morning, Eric Bieniemy having a family issue that's just horrible. Kyle Shanahan, a terrible car accident. He may not be ready for week 1. So we'll check in on some of those situations and much more coming up. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelley, next man up, 102.5 The Game. Next man up, 102.5 The Game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelley with you. We got a little under 30 minutes left with you. Been a fun show so far. Getting ready for training camp. We'll hear from Mike Borgonzi, Robert Saleh tomorrow. Practice starts on Wednesday. Football season is almost here. Did want to go around the NFL a little bit. Horrible news out of Virginia this morning. The wife of Chiefs offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy, Mia Bieniemy, was shot. The good news is she seems to be in stable condition. So keeping our thoughts with their family. Their son Elijah was arrested. It's a developing story. Don't want to get too deep into it, not knowing what's going on. But man, just horrible news out of Virginia. Bieniemy living there from his time with Washington. He's now back with the Chiefs, and I hate to see that happen to his family. Similar situation with Calais Campbell earlier this offseason. Just tough stuff. So our prayers and thoughts with them. Also tough news this weekend. Kyle Shanahan seemed to be in a pretty gnarly car accident that is limiting him throughout training camp. Chris Forster, their assistant head coach, is overseeing the 49ers while Kyle Shanahan kind of works his way back. Saw he had to get nearly 40 stitches, broken ribs. So tough to see that with Kyle Shanahan, and hoping that he's going to be back healthy sooner rather than later.
Yeah, a concussion, broken nose, just a lot of different things. And when I saw the update, it just one of those things that just caught you by surprise. And really the only thing you could say is, dang, that's tough, but
right.
Prayers for him and his family for sure.
Yeah, July 14th was when the car accident happened, and they're trying to adjust. He's still around the team, and it seems like Shanahan is going to be like on the sidelines, but maybe just not as involved as he typically would be. Titans will be going up there in a couple of weeks. You wonder how much the ramp-up process for Shanahan coming back will be as the Titans and 49ers are set for a joint practice in 2 weeks. So I think that Shanahan, they said he's going to be ready for week 1. John Lynch said that he should be fine. But man, you just never know. It's like that you get in the car, you never know what's going to happen. Apparently it was pretty bad on July 14th, and glad to see that he is at least okay and recovering. But that was a very jarring story over the weekend as well, that he clearly was very injured in this wreck.
Yeah, and I was telling you the Eric Bieniemy situation with his son and shooting his Eric Bieniemy's wife. It reminded me of the Calais Campbell story where, right, his brother murdered their mom. It's just a lot of jarring things going on right now.
It's just like you see some headlines and you can't believe that it's real, but thoughts going out to the Bieniemy family, to Kyle Shanahan as he recovers, and hopefully everybody ends up being okay from some very cycle this morning with the Bieniemy news, the Michael Lombardi story from UNC that we already talked about. We also saw this morning the Bills release new uniforms. Have you seen these, Parker?
Yeah, I didn't like them. Wasn't a fan.
Yeah, I'm gonna say I'm not a big fan of them. They look very UFL to me. The helmet is where they lose me. I don't hate the color, but the helmet not being the actual like buffalo on there, but just being the red stripe. I'm not a huge fan of that.
I thought there might be a bill on the side. I couldn't tell what it was from the pictures.
So it's like a zoomed in version of the bill. It's just got like the eye and the red stripe going back. It's, I guess, kind of like a Vikings helmet where they've got the horns on the side. Like that's kind of what they're going for. On the announcement, the Bills say the charge helmet, bringing the charging buffalo to life with the horn, eye, and charge streak displayed on a blue shell with a micro-metallic flake finish and metallic blue accents, boasting a mindset of energy, strength, and attack. Don't like the helmets.
Yeah, it does. It does look like the UFL.
I don't mind the color. Like, so they're the Nickel City, I guess so.
Yeah, the gray's not bad.
The gray's not horrible. I don't hate the gray.
Ideally, the color of the helmet's not bad either. It's
the
just
helmet bothers me.
I don't like the side of the helmet.
I would prefer they go back to the red. Like, give me red uniforms instead of the gray. But it's not awful. The helmet doesn't do it for me. We're going to see new Titans uniforms here in, I would guess, the next couple of weeks. I saw the Vikings put out a tweet saying rivalry uniforms are coming soon. And the Titans are part of the 8-team group that's getting these rivalry uniforms this year. Last year, it was the AFC East and the NFC West. They wore them once or twice last season. This year, it's the AFC South and the NFC North that are getting new uniforms. So Titans already have the new sets with the more Oilers-looking uniforms, the new logo. The rumor is that the rivalry uniforms are going to be navy blue. So we will see, but I would guess that we get some news on that in the next week and a half as we gear up for the season.
Because the Rams just released new uniforms too last week.
Right. Yes, they did. Yeah.
Double set.
Yes. I want the Rams to have a St. Louis throwback. I don't know if they ever will. They've really bought into the blue and yellow, but I do miss like the Steven Jackson era, Jeff Fisher era Rams uniforms. They weren't great when they happened, but it's like nostalgia comes for us all at some point. Like, I think they should wear the throwbacks once a year, going back to like the brownish and navy blue that they used to wear.
So I was watching Get Up this morning, and they showed, like, they were talking about Aaron Donald. Are you talking about the helmets that were like the navy blue, but the ram horn was like almost like, I guess it's like gold, like yellow, but they also had uniforms where it was a navy helmet, but the horn was white.
Well, yeah. So they've got those two new ones, but I'm thinking of like, I mean,
well,
I guess it's the typical Rams ones, like even back to Greatest Show on, or not Greatest Show on
like
Turf,
Kurt Warner days.
Like this
those?
one. This is Steven Jackson that I'm going to show you right here. Like, if you can see it on the screen,
okay,
like those ones. Yeah. That's I would love a throwback of those to wear,
like when they were in St. Louis.
Yes,
those.
Yeah. Give me a St. Louis era Rams throwback.
Modernize it a little bit.
Yeah.
Kind of like Tampa did with their
with the
their orange cream. Oh my gosh,
yeah.
Those are great.
I agree. I think
Eagles, Kelly Green.
There's something to be said about modern takes on throwback uniforms. The best uniforms in the league right now are the throwbacks, the creamsicles in Tampa, the Kelly Greens in Philly, the Seahawks throwback uniforms.
Oh.
The Titans Oilers uniforms were great, and they've taken that into their new style. I think that, again, I don't think the Rams would be in that category, but I do think it would be cool to see them wear those every once in a while.
So those are the consensus, and in my opinion, the top 4 best throwback uniforms.
Yeah, I agree.
What would be 5th?
What are other good ones?
I do like the Bills red with like their old Bills.
Yeah, I agree
helmet.
with that. There are a lot of teams that really haven't changed their look all that drastically over the years. Like the Jets are wearing kind of throwbacky uniforms, but it's like the colors are exactly the same. It's just about like where the stripes are and what the logo looks like, which is fine, but I wouldn't put them in that category. I'm trying to think of anybody who has like a very unique throwback uniform.
Miami, the only difference they made was they just like the dolphin was more like curled.
Yeah.
And now it's more, flat, but opposite on either side.
Let me see.
What about New England?
Yeah, the like Pat the Patriot ones are good. I don't mind those ones. Because I'm looking through, a lot of them just don't have the Broncos. The Orange Crush ones are good.
I like those.
Yeah, I like those.
Back
ones
with John
too.
Elway.
Yeah. The Titans will be getting a new uniform for the rivalries. The rumor is it's going to be navy with like, you saw when they released the word markings and stuff for the new uniforms, there was like a cursive Music City in there.
Yeah.
That's what the rumor is that it's going to be. It's going to be navy blue with the light blue Music City. I wouldn't hate it. But that should be coming in the next couple of weeks. Bills uniforms, going to say no. Chad says
hard no on the Bills' new uniforms.
Chad says they look like Boise State, but somehow less cool. Chip from Mount Juliet says the helmet is a head scratcher.
It's like Boise State mixed with like San Jose State. Throw Kentucky in there.
Yeah. No, I don't like it. I wish they would. And I just texted my my Bills fan friend, and he said that he was like, just go to the Reds. Make the Reds the alternate. Have your blues, have your whites, and then have the throwback Reds. Red helmet.
What was the white chrome they wore on Sunday Night Football versus the Ravens?
That was the rivalry uniforms.
Those were beautiful.
Like with the specks or something like that
those.
in there. Yeah.
I love
so
those.
That's the rivalry uniforms the Titans will be getting in the next couple of weeks. So, and we'll find out when they're going to wear them. Typically they're worn for primetime games, but the Titans have none of those. So it'll just be a random game wherever they see fit. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. Last call for phones. We will wrap up the show coming up next. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelley, next man up, 1025 The Game. Next man up, 1025 The Game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelley, wrapping up the show on this Reaction Monday. Chasing Big Joe coming up next. Titans training camp officially gets started tomorrow. I would say tomorrow is the official start date, even though they're not practicing till Wednesday, right? When the players report, you get to hear from Borgonzi, get to hear from Saleh. So it all gets started tomorrow. We were talking about the Bills' new uniforms, which I'm going to say out on. Not a fan. I just showed Parker during the break. The Bills have worked into the architecture of their new stadium a feature like right. I guess I would say it's like where you load your hot dog with condiments is where it's set up. It's like the little ledge across from the concession stand. Over top of it, they have worked a broken folding table into the stadium. Unbelievable. That is the perfect example of a team that understands what its fan base wants and giving them that. And then you give new uniforms that I think miss the mark a little bit, but the folding table being broken, just being a part of the stadium's design, I think is flawless execution from the Bills.
And I told you, it's on my bucket list. Like, I want to go tailgate with Bills Mafia one day. I want to jump through a table. I want to jump through a table with Bills Mafia.
Yeah, that's a bucket list thing, right? I have been to a Bills game, but I was 10 or 11.
I've seen the Bills play in person, but it was here. So
I went to a Bills game. It was a Bills-Titans game when I think I was 10 or 11. It was the game that ended like 52-45. It was Hasselbeck versus Ryan Fitzpatrick. The Bills returned a kick for a touchdown early in the second half, and I want to say Nate Washington caught the game winner. I could be wrong on that, but it was a crazy game between two teams that I think won a combined like 9 games that entire season.
Yeah, pretty wild stuff.
But I was not old enough to jump through a table. At least not being a Bills fan, they didn't have me jump.
I mean, they have what? They have 7-8-year-olds jumping through tables now.
They've done like the baptism where they like take a baby and have a fake folding table and like will place them through it. Like it's great out there. One of the best fan bases in all of sports. Scott on the text line says, speaking of new uniforms, I know this is college, but with the new concrete company uniform deal, the Vanderbilt just announced their logo or jersey sponsor with, I want to say it's SCM Concrete last week. SRM Concrete, excuse me. SRM Concrete going to be on all the jerseys. And somebody did make a mock-up of a concrete-themed jersey, and Scott just sent it in. I'll show it to you, Parker. It's great. It's like gray, but it's got like some black specks in there. I think it would be great for Vanderbilt with kind of black and gold accents on the helmet. I think it would be great. So, work off that partnership with SRM Concrete, and you've got yourself a great jersey idea. Speaking of Vanderbilt, before we wrap up here, during the show today, the SEC did release their men's basketball schedules for the new season coming up in November. Vandy and Tennessee start and end their conference schedule against each other. How about it? So January,
the way it should be.
Right. January 2nd at Tennessee, March 6th at Vanderbilt. Tennessee and Vandy bookend the schedule against each other. I think that's great.
No, that is definitely one of the highlights of the schedule. The other highlight is you always look at the non-conference. Tennessee playing Purdue this year. I feel like that should be a regular thing because it's a cross-conference rivalry. It's become that way over the last few years.
Yeah, let's see. So Tennessee's got a tough schedule this
Michigan
year.
State is in there. Florida State probably not going to be good this year, but that's the SEC ACC challenge.
Yeah, so they just released the full schedule. So in the non-conference, you play Michigan State in November, playing in the Players Era Classic. So you're going to have to play good friend Buzz Williams in Maryland, and then a couple other games out there in Vegas. You get NC State, you get Florida State, you get Purdue. And then, of course, the SEC schedule, always tough. Playing Vandy twice, Kentucky twice, and looking for it's like playing a matching game on this schedule. Who's their third double opponent?
I think that is it.
Is it only 2?
Oh, I'm sorry, Missouri.
Missouri, yes, I see it now. I'm playing like where you got to flip over the cards and find 2 that match. Yes, Missouri is the other one. So, yeah, tough schedule, as it always is in the SEC, but Tennessee, with the investment they have in that roster, probably needs a tough schedule if they want to compete to be a 1 or a 2 seed.
Yeah, and expectations are going to be the highest possible point under Rick Barnes, given that you went and you got a ton of players from the portal that all average double figures, except a couple who are going to be coming off the bench. And the salary for the basketball team was doubled this year. So Final Four expectations this year in Knoxville.
Yeah, I mean, you've been to the Elite Eight over and over again and haven't been able to take that next step. this feels like it's the year with the investment they made in the transfer portal. So Tennessee playing a tough non-conference schedule. Vandy, I don't believe their non-con schedule is fully out yet. There are some games that have been released, but obviously do get the conference schedule here. You're going to see Tennessee twice, Kentucky twice, and then again having to go through here. I know all of this was announced earlier in the year. A&M twice. So those are the three for Vanderbilt. Texas A&M, getting to see some buckyball twice. First at Memorial Gym on January 30th, and then over in College Station on February 20th. They have not announced the full non-conference slate yet, but it isn't going to be easy. Wake, Memphis, Notre Dame in the SEC ACC Challenge, which I actually don't know what Notre Dame's men's team looks like this year. They're always kind of up and down as it goes along, but going to
Micah Shrewsbury is still their head coach, right?
I believe so, yes. So I can't wait for hoop season. I know I don't want to look past football because obviously football is what we look forward to all summer, but I am excited for hoop season. I'm hoping we get the women's schedule coming out here soon. So, I can start planning out what my winter is going to look like. But we do have football coming up in short order. A lot of training camps already reporting. We got 2 minutes. This is perfect to wrap up the show here. Did you see Mike Vrabel show up to Patriots training camp?
With the dog?
I mean,
that's hilarious.
Just insane. Just insane to so much scrutiny, so much controversy. How can I make myself not be the villain here? I'm going to walk up with a dog to start off my first press conference of training camp. Just hilarious.
Well, that's a good way to do it too.
I mean, I get it, right? Try and make yourself as, I don't want to use the word soft, but like friendly as possible. Oh, look, I've got a cute little dog. Do you guys have any questions? Got the dog here.
This had to be strategic because he never did this when he was here in Nashville.
No, he did not. I don't think you would have ever seen Mike Vrabel walk up smiling with a dog in his arm. But when you're trying to deflect the attention somewhere else,
dogs are a good way to do that.
Yeah, bringing up a dog was probably a smart thing for Mike Vrabel.
I know that would distract me for sure.
Because the further you get into training camp, the less of a story that's going to be. There's going to be more actual football topics to talk about. So I think Mike Vrabel knows what he's doing out there, bringing the dog up for the first one, and then hopefully it can fly under the radar the rest of the time through training camp.
Yeah, because this was obviously a story that dominated the offseason, but when games get here, it's like the same thing in college football. A lot of us are talking about the Senate bill, NIL, transfer portal, all of the downsides of college football. But when Michigan is at Ohio State late November, you're not thinking about that stuff.
You just got to get to the point where you put the ball down and play. And we are close. Training camp opens up tomorrow. Parker, it was great to have you back. And we will do it again tomorrow, 9 a.m. Chase and Big Joe are coming up next. Keep it right here on 102.5 The Game.